My husband died, but I have to pretend he was a good man. Overcoming a *C to reclaim freedom and start a new life for myself and my children. Original post. My husband passed away 3 months ago. I was relieved of that. He abused me financially, mentally, and even physically. When I got pregnant, he convinced me to quit my job, saying that he would take care of me. I could never buy anything again without asking his permission. I couldn't even buy a cream without asking his permission, and he decided if I could or not, even months ago, that I had a little money of my own. I had to ask him for permission to buy something. What was mine was his and his was his. But I stayed there because I still loved him and I didn't have a place to go. I had too low self-esteem and let myself be stepped on. When I stopped loving him, he had already had his first affair. He made me believe that I was to blame for the affair because I didn't want to have sex months after my birth. That left me torn and I had to receive stitches. I was already planning my exit and saving money little by little while I was working selling things from home, since he wouldn't let me work outside because he was very jealous. I wanted to pay for a lawyer. He was having another affair with a friend of his, which luckily kept him busier, and I didn't care anymore that he didn't pay attention to me. I wanted him to stay as far away as possible. I knew that man and he knew me. I could have made a big fuss, but I didn't. I kept quiet, planning my way out while he and that man slept together in secret. I only felt disgusted by my husband, nothing more. But my husband died in a way I never would have expected. He is now a martyr. When someone dies, all the sins of that person disappear. Because that's what even my family thinks. Those who knew about his affair and how he manipulated me are now talking about how good a man he was, and we shouldn't insult someone who's dead. Everyone around me talks about how beautiful our relationship was. His family talks about what a great man he was and how he always focused on giving everything to me and our kid. His affair partner hugged me at the funeral, saying that my husband loved me. His friends told me what a great person he was. Everyone talks about how good but he was and how he is now an angel in heaven. And I have to pretend to be sad. The day he died, I cried a lot, but not out of sadness. I cried with relief and I felt free. It would have taken me too many years to save to pay for lawyers with my little store without him realizing that I was keeping money in secret. He would have kept everything. He would have made my life a hell, and I know it because he had told me so every time I stood for myself. But now I have the house, I have everything, I have the monthly money for being a widow, I have my children totally with me. I have started to become a psychologist. Everyone thinks that I do it to cope with my grief, but no, it is to overcome the abuse I suffered from him. It was really hard to pretend to be sad at the funeral, but I did it for my child. I did it because now everything is over and I'm free. If I made a fuss, my ex-mill would have done something so that I wouldn't keep anything. They were just like him. But now I'm just a sad widow who needs help in their eyes. The silly widow who didn't know anything, but that's helping me to be free and have what I deserve. Sorry for the bad English. I use the translator for many parts. Edit. We are not from an Islamic country, and here same-sex couples can live and marry freely. He just cheated on me with a man like he cheated on me with a woman. I guess he was bisexual. Relevant comments. Organic 2003. I am stuck on his affair partner hugging you and telling you he loved you. She had the balls to show at the funeral. Damn, you have more control than I could have ever mustered. Cheers to a life full of fun and love. OOP. His affair partner was his football teammate and friend. He is a man. Thanks. PM_ME_happy_ thinks your husband had an affair with a man? Or another woman? You have a child? Or children? OP. His first affair was with a woman, I think. The second with a man, of which I know. Maybe he had others that I don't know. For privacy reasons, I don't want to reveal the number of children, so I prefer to leave it at that. Update. It's been several weeks since I last posted, and I didn't expect my post to end in other places. Honestly, I had totally forgotten that I posted here, but a few days ago the lover and friend of my ex-husband. I have started calling my deceased husband that way. I don't want to be eternally tied to the idea that he is still my husband even after death. Death did me the favor of separating us, visited my house saying that he found my post. I didn't expect him to find this, and it scared me a bit, but honestly there's nothing I can do about this anymore if someone has posted it elsewhere without asking me first. One of my sons let him in when I hadn't heard the doorbell, so I had no choice but to let him in to not make a drama in front of my kids, and I wanted to know what he was going to say. Once alone he told me that he knows that I know about him and my husband having an affair because of the post I sent to TikTok, although I never did any post on TikTok. That's why I think someone uploaded this there. He told me that my husband was not the best husband, but he was a great friend to everyone and a very hard-working man to everyone. That even his family misses him too much, and even though he had his mistakes in the past, that I should let go of the past and stop digging into it, 'cause we're all better off like that. He was insisting for a while to such an extent that I felt intimidated by him to the point he reminded me of my husband, and it is the first time that I have that feeling with a man that is not my ex-husband. I can talk peacefully with them, but this situation made me feel on the verge of a panic attack because of his attitude. He's basically scared that I'll tell everything. He's gay and I don't know if he has a boyfriend, but maybe he does, and that's why he doesn't want me to say anything about their affair. I've been a submissive woman for years. My ex-husband turned me into a fearful woman that I wasn't before. He made me the kind of woman who was always going to put her head down, but when he died I felt so happy and liberated I cried with relief for days. And when this man came into my house to tell me what to do, it was like seeing my ex-husband again, giving me instructions about how to behave and what to do. The man who knows very well that I was in an abusive relationship because he knew how my ex was and chose to sleep with him anyways. The man my husband made me cook for and then fucked him as if I were just a maid was at my house telling me that my ex was a good person and that I should shut my mouth. He was telling me what to do and I just punched his face. To be honest, I wanted to slap him, but for some reason I felt so angry that I hit him, and it felt like hitting my husband too. I don't regret it and I felt good. I yelled at him and told him to leave or I was going to tell everyone what happened. He ended up leaving the house and he has been quiet since that day. My main plan was just to shut my mouth and let go of the past, but that is one thing, and a totally different thing is that this man comes and wants to impose on me what to do as if I were a doll. Maybe my reaction wasn't the best, but I'm tired of people telling me to shut up. I never managed to say anything to my husband, and that day I felt that I somehow did that. I haven't told anyone yet, nor do I think about doing so, but if he does something I won't hesitate twice before this time whether to make a TikTok or post on Facebook talking about everything. With the issue of the house, with the economic crisis, I am not sure that anyone can afford what a house like this is worth, but for now I have focused on finally being able to get a better job in the future, to be able to rent a house and be able to rent this house. That could be a really good way to have money. My other goal in the future is to buy a small piece of land, no matter how far it is. I want to have something that is my own and my children. My children don't miss their father too much and I understand them. It has taken me a while to get them a child psychologist, but recently they started to go to their sessions and they are doing well. I also go to a psychologist. I think the best thing I've done is to start making excuses for my ex-MIL and my own family for not seeing them as often as before, and I've started the stage of cutting off contact little by little, making excuses with work or that we're not at home, although I still have to let my ex-MIL come home from time to time. I think even my kids are happier when they see that my own mood is better. I doubt that many people are interested in this, but thank you for the messages I received. Although many do not understand that cultures and laws are different and buying a house or moving to the other side of a country in a month is impossible for many. Relevant comments. Llama_48,213, the audacity. He thinks you are still the maid. Good for you for showing your strength and sending him on his way. The nerve. I would strongly advise you to coach your children to not allow anyone in that house. Not just for AP if he returns. This includes the family you plan to distance yourself from. OOP. Yes, they know that they should not open the door to strangers, but they open the door to people they know because my ex-husband always sent them to open the door for him. I have begun to explain to them that they should not open the door to anyone without telling me first, and now I leave everything with a lock and key. My elderly mom's new friend gives me a bad vibe, prompting me to uncover hidden motives and protect her from potential financial harm. Original post. I cannot for the life of me figure out why I feel like this, but all of my spidey senses are tingling on this woman. Here's a bit of the background. My 40F elderly mom, 70F, has been ill for quite some time and is on hospice. She was living in an independent living place where it was all elderly people in apartment-type units. She has been living there for about 6 or 7 months and made a few casual old people friends, but mostly kept to herself, so I thought. A couple weeks ago my boys and I were visiting my mom. We live right down the street and visit often, when a woman walked up to us with my mom. I extended my hand to introduce myself to this woman when she dismissed the handshake and instead went in for a hug and said, "Oh, I only do hugs for family and we're pretty much family." Okay, a little weird coming from someone I've never met before, and also never even heard a single mention of her, but I pretty much brush it off thinking to myself that she's probably just really lonely or something. I asked my mom about this new friend and she just says that they met there at the old people place and she's been a really good friend to her. Great, I love when my mom has friends, it's important to have friends. But this woman just keeps giving me weird vibes and I can't pinpoint why. A few things that seem odd to me. My mom is moving to a more traditional apartment complex this weekend, and this new friend liked the new apartment complex so much that she decided to move to the same place as well. Her apartment isn't ready yet, but she'll be moving to the same complex as my mom next month. She apparently bought my mom's dog a I have the world's best auntie. Sweatshirt for Christmas. They had known each other for maybe 2 months at that point. She called the other day too, I don't really know why. I guess she gave me her phone number and more formally introduced herself to me. She talked about doing a lot of caretaking stuff for my mom. Oh, I can manage her medications for her if you want. So I replied that while I appreciate the offer, there's a lot of controlled medications and hospice prefers to keep minimal people involved in the medicine stuff and that taking on caretaking responsibilities for a friend can get exhausting, so it might be best for them to just focus on being friends rather than her wearing herself out trying to take care of her. She immediately went to my mom and made it sound like I was shit-talking my own mom, saying how she's just an exhausting person, blah blah. When I confronted my new friend about going to my mom and relaying our private conversation in a totally twisted way, the friend lied and said that my mom had grabbed her phone and read it all in the text messages. It was over the phone and not at all via text messages. When I pointed out there were no texts, she just kind of stumbled and I dropped it because I knew it wouldn't get anywhere. Every time I talk to my mom on the phone, I can hear this woman telling her what to say or adding comments in. And none of it is outwardly worrisome things, but it feels like I can't have any conversation with just my mom. I'm a very trusting person who generally tries to see the best in people. And this woman has not given me any concrete reasons to doubt her intentions and has in fact been very friendly and polite to me in all of our interactions. Nonetheless, I can't shake this feeling that there's something wrong here. I sat my mom down yesterday and had a conversation with her about my feelings towards this new friend, and she didn't get defensive at all but disagreed with me and said that her new friend is just being kind and offering to help with stuff because she knows my mom is not the most organized of people and could use the help. I begged my mom to please be cautious and to take the friendship slow and to keep it simply as a friendship and let me, her actual family, handle caretaking stuff. Despite no changes in medications, my mom has been more confused lately and comes across to me like she's overtaken medication, but I only give her 1 dose at a time and the rest is locked up at all times, so it isn't that. But just to be safe, since she's been more confused lately, I took my mom's credit and debit cards so no one can take advantage of her financially. Reddit, please help me figure out what this woman would have to gain in coming between my mom and I if it isn't medication or money. I don't know how to do a background search or if that's legal for any random person to do. But I did look this new friend up on a couple websites and all I learned from that is that she has a lot of also known as names, but I can't find anything else. I'll pay for a background search if anyone has a recommendation for good ones. We're in California. Does any of this raise any red flags to anyone else, or am I just being too overprotective of my mom on this? Oh, I almost forgot. I called one of my mom's oldest and closest friends the other day and asked her if she's met his new friend and if so, what her impression was. She said, honestly, I don't know why I feel like this, but I just get a bad feeling about her. I just feel like she's up to no good. Hearing this made me feel better in that I'm not the only one to pick up on something, but I don't know what, if anything, to do about it all. Update. Thank you so much for all of the responses and heartfelt advice. I'm so sorry to have been MIA for so long after I originally posted, but it's just been a lot. I needed to take a beat to take it all in and deal with the punches from real life that kept coming my way. Immediately after I posted last, I went to talk with my mom. I explained my concerns and she agreed to the 2 cameras I put up in her apartment. On moving day, I was out of the apartment for a few minutes taking my kids back to my house when I logged onto the camera app to test out the settings. I overheard my mom and the friend talking about me. It was not very nice and very much seemed like the friend was just teeing things up to come between my mom and I. My mom was playing right into it. The friend, I'll just call her Fran to make it easier, was gone when I got back to the apartment, but I got into it with my mom. I was crying, telling her how hurtful it is to hear my own mother participating in a negative conversation about me after everything I do and have done for her. She cried, I cried. It was awful. But at the end I had at least convinced her that Fran was up to no good. Mom agreed to create some distance between her and Fran, and she immediately told Fran that her behavior towards me was not going to fly any longer and all talk of anything to do with me was off limits. Fran seemed to understand and blamed her behavior towards me on some flimsy excuse that I didn't buy for a second. All was calm for a week or so when one morning I called my mom to check in on her only to find out she was with Fran out running errands. When I pushed for more information, I uncovered that Fran had taken my mom to the bank so that my mom could obtain a new debit card. Fran very much knew I had taken my mom's debit card, with my mom's blessing, because my mom was having episodes of increased confusion and wasn't aware of who or what she was spending money on, because my mom had forgotten she had given me her previous debit card. That was the final straw for me. That night I sent Fran the following text message. Hi Fran. Mom told me about you guys going to the bank today to get a card, and I just wanted to let you know that I know my mom appreciates your friendship, but that I do not appreciate your getting yourself involved in things you have no business being involved in. Mom and I have her finances under control between the two of us, and we do not need any assistance getting her squared away, no matter how well-meaning. She's asked me to take her card again, the new one, and has put me as the main account holder so I can be sure she has access to what she needs but that no one else does. I want to believe you're coming from a sincere place of just wanting to help my mom, but it complicates friendships greatly when you get into financial territory. I handle all of my mom's finances and medical stuff, and it's working for us that way. My mom very much appreciates having you as her friend, but she doesn't need a caretaker. I've got that covered. If you sincerely want to be her friend, you need to take 10 giant steps back and check yourself regarding how you're coming across to me. Because from my perspective, it very much looks like you are dancing precariously close to the elder abuse line, and I'm sure you wouldn't want me to get the authorities involved here, but that's exactly what will happen if things continue down this path. Fran responded with some BS reply akin to, "Oh my word, I would never take advantage of anyone and I just wanted to help your mom, blah blah blah. Oh, and I think you and I have gotten off on the wrong foot, daughter, which is my fault, but I'd like to start over again, more blah blah blah." I never replied to Fran further, and she has, shockingly, not really reached out to my mom since. I believe she is due to move into the apartment complex this weekend though, so we shall see if she pops back up out of the woodwork. I think she understands that I see through her attempts to come between my mom and I, and that she'll need to focus her efforts to scam people somewhere else. I notified my mom's hospice nurses and her social worker as well. I also bought a really super cool medication dispenser. I won't name it because I'm not plugging anything, but feel free to reach out to me if anyone has family members that they need some help managing medications for. It's expensive and probably cost prohibitive for a lot of folks, but it has been a game changer for me to keep my mom's medicine safe and organized. That is locked and syncs up to an app, so I get notified every time it dispenses a medication. That made me feel much better about Fran not having any access whatsoever to my mom's prescriptions, but the trip to the bank showed me exactly what Fran was after. I notified the bank that if Fran is with my mom, they are to contact me immediately. All in all, I think most of you were correct. Fran was using my mom for money. Or she was trying to, but luckily I caught it before much damage was done. I think I've made my position on Fran clear to her, which is why she is staying away. I think I still need to contact the independent living facility about my concerns with Fran because, I swear I'm not making this is, my mom says that Fran is going to be working at the independent living facility after she moves out. And I don't want her to be in a position to take advantage of anyone else. Thank you again to everyone who replied and reached out to me with resources and/or advice. I read every reply, and I actually read a number of them to my mom as well. It really helped her to see Fran for who she really is. New update second, hopefully final. Update September 30th, 2024. Thank you to those who keep checking in with me asking how my mom is doing and if there's any updates. Original post here first, update post here. My mom is still on hospice and doing okay all things considered. She has her good and her bad days, but she has been mostly lucid lately and I'm grateful for that. F has been mostly MIA, thank goodness, ever since I told her, in no uncertain terms, to beat it. The only time I have heard from her since was when my mom's phone wasn't working and F called me and left a message wanting to know if my mom was okay. I left her to read. So that told me that my mom hasn't cut her out completely, although she tells me she has. But I have, with my mom's blessing, taken control of any avenue F could possibly use to take advantage of my mother. I alerted the hospice nurses and social worker, and I let F know that I had done that as well. My mom also finally made some better friends who live nearby, and they also helped keep an eye on her for me. I did not go to the police as I didn't feel I had a case to do so, but I did let F know I wouldn't hesitate to do so if given a reason. If F comes back around my mom or gives me any reason to think something is up, I'll update you all to let you know. But as of now, my mom is safe. I handle all her medication as well as her finances, so no one can weasel their way in to try to take anything at all away from my mom. Thank you to everyone for your care and concern. Relevant comments. Comment: they want her pills. OP. I thought the same thing, which is why I locked them up tight. My mom agreed to a camera right over her dispenser so we can keep eyes on her medications at all times. The machine I got her is pretty cool too and alerts me via text if the machine door is ever opened. Not that it could be because it has a passcode on it that even my mom doesn't know. So there's lots of safeguards in place to ensure no one gets into any of her stuff at all. A player's mom nearly ruined my D&D game, but instead led me to love, friendship and a new role as Uncle Caleb in a found family. Original post September 13th, 2024. I run 2 D&D games. One I run at a local game shop. It is family friendly and I welcome anyone who can behave and take a shower. Second game is run at my house with me and my 4 oldest friends. We get drunk and screw around in the campaign. It's a campaign we have been running since 5e first came out and is very much built around our terrible humor. Very not public play space friendly. New player is a nice 9-year-old kid named Simon. He loves playing in my public game and found out I run another game. Asked if he could join and I told him it wasn't really open to new players. He was cool about it. Simon is a good kid. Simon's mom found out later when she picked him up and tried to force him into my other game. I had to get the owner to help me calm her down and get her to leave. Simon was in tears apologizing. I felt so bad for him. Owner told mom if she ever set foot in his store again he'd ban her and Simon from the store and get the police involved if he had to. She left in a hurry and almost boned a car in her rush to leave. Simon's dad drops him off now. He came to me and the owner and begged for our forgiveness. Turns out mom wanted Simon in my game as a form of babysitting so she could go out and party with her other terrible mom friends. We told him as long as it's him dropping Simon off there won't be any issues. He's a good kid, and I'd hate to lose our monk. TLDR, I run 2 games. One is kid-friendly, the other is private at my home. Kid wanted private games. I said no. Mom got mad and ruined everyone's day because she is a bad person. Edit. Thanks for indulging in my drama sharing. Love the hobby. Simon is a great little dude. His dad is a great big dude. Glad to have met them. Thanks everyone for letting me spam replies and shoot the breeze. You're all great. Update September 17th, 2024. If I have any updates on things I'll post on my profile so as to not spam unrelated things on various subreddits. Original post here. Hey everyone. It has been pure chaos the last few days but after everyone was so nice I figured I'd let you guys know what has happened since it's mostly good news and should put some minds at ease. I ran into Simon's dad and his sister Anna at the store and they invited me out to lunch to chat. Simon's doing pretty well all things considered. Dad says he and mom were already most of the way through the divorce process but he and his almost ex-wife agreed to keep it quiet until they had finalized some agreements. Mom showed her ass yet again and basically admitted she didn't want Simon very often and negotiated for some money in exchange for giving full custody to dad with a few holiday visitations, if she can make it. She's moving a few states away to live with some of her friends from college. He doubts they see her more than once a year if that. He said it went as well as he could have hoped. He's just glad it's almost over. Auntie Anna, as Simon calls her, is dad's sister. She's stepping in to help with Simon while dad juggles everything. She brought him to the shop this weekend and she hung out by me while I ran the game so she could learn. Everyone had a good time. Even got a few giggles from Anna so I'll consider that a GM's job well done for first impressions of the hobby. Shame the first RP she had to see was me as Marty the farty lizard folk merchant NPC that they ran into last session. Lots of hissing and farting noises out of me for 15 minutes. Simon was able to pass enough con saves to buy what the party needed from Marty, discounts in exchange for risk of poison damage, and they tricked the corrupt town guard into accidentally arresting themselves due to an elaborate performance by the bard and Simon's monk. Game went well. Anna and I talked while Simon looked at all the dice sets for an hour after the game. She's been pulled into a parent group of parents of kids in Simon's class. I guess Simon has all the other kids wanting to try playing and since my private game is on hiatus for at least 6 months I offered to run one if the parents were comfortable with it. I end up getting added to the group chat and Anna's house is where we're gaming. Next day Anna and I met up for lunch and I helped her put together a gaming space in her living room. A few of the moms came by to drop off some snacks and to introduce themselves in person. I feel like I've been adopted into a family of families but I don't even have a family of my own. Everyone has been great. I'm so glad Simon is surrounded by these people and not people like his mom. The kids were all very well behaved. Anna and I were a bit nervous being the chaperones for a bunch of kids, but Simon's friends are great. They all had a blast making characters and doing the test encounters I had for them. There's a girl that made certain she was always seated next to Simon and barely took her eyes off him. She has a huge crush on him, but doesn't think he even realizes what's going on. It's adorable. Parents were all happy with game night and honestly I liked running for all kids way more than I had expected. Anna and I agreed we were fine with doing this regularly so now Anna and I are the game masters to everyone. Also I'm now Uncle Caleb to Simon. Not sure what I did to earn the title and I definitely didn't get emotional when he called me that. So that's about it. I still run 2 games. I've been adopted by a 9-year-old. And I've taken over Anna's living room with minis and battle mats. Simon is an incredible little dude and I'm glad to have met him and his amazing family. One parent excluded. TLDR, mostly good news for Simon and his family. I've been adopted into said family somehow, and I'm now running a game for a bunch of Simon's friends in place of my private home game for the time being. Edit. Thanks again, folks. Like I said in a comment earlier, I don't foresee there being anything else to update on that would be relevant to this sub, so, barring some other bizarre incident happening to me while I'm gaming, I suppose this is me fading into the background. I think I smell something. Oh God, Marty's back. Edit 2, just gonna sneak this in here because people are actually messaging me like crazy and I wanna just state my status with Anna. I am deeply infatuated with her. I could just go on about her like a love-struck puppy, but I'm embarrassing myself enough as it is. We've got a busy next couple weeks ahead of us, but luckily for me a lot of that busy time will be spent with her working on things for Simon and the game nights. So for now I'm gonna let things be, give us time to know each other better. We've been texting pretty regularly the last few days, and I'm starting to think there's something here. Once things calm down I fully intend to ask her on a date. Too many folks in my life and on here telling me I'd be an idiot not to. Also spoke with Drew, Simon's dad, this morning and he's doing alright. Said he'll be better in a few weeks when he's able to take some vacation. Gonna take Simon on a father-son trip for a few days. He's exhausted. Even with the reduced workload he's just now getting time to rest. Poor guy needs it. New updates. I've fallen really hard for a woman I just met. September 27th, 2024. It's been a week. I've known this woman for about a week and I've already fallen hard. Infatuation levels are all set to max. She's incredible. Gonna be spending a lot of time with her for a few weeks and I and a lot of folks we know are saying I should ask her out. I'm going to. I just want to let us get through this busy point and take a bit of time to get to know her more first before I do that. If anyone sees this September 22nd, 2024, I'm just going to update here if I have any good news to share at some point. Update for anyone still curious. October 4th, 2024. Hello everyone. While this is an update originating from a post on RPG horror stories, there isn't much of a horror story anymore. Just some updates on my situation and the people in my life. I wasn't expecting as much interest after the initial drama, but I've also been made aware just how much of a dense goober I am, partially thanks to folks on Reddit pointing some things out. My nephew Simon is the coolest little dude in the universe. His interest in board games is starting to really take off ever since Anna brought him over to my place and he saw my shelf of games. He absolutely loves Ticket to Ride. I gave it to him and he wants to play it next game night. The public game party is now chasing the big bad through a few portals leading to a chronomancer's domain in the stomach of a kraken. So that should be fun. Simon has expressed interest in learning to DM. I'll teach him everything I know. I would gladly play in any campaign that boy runs. He said he has some ideas and I intend to help him make those into dice-based reality. As for how he's handling the situation with his mom, Simon is doing well, but he struggles. He's very clingy toward Drew. I'm betting this is normal for kids in Simon's situation. Simon has Drew, Anna, and a good head on his shoulders. He'll be fine. Drew and Simon spend a lot of their time together just doing little projects. They're currently putting together a puzzle while watching Simon's shows. Drew told me this was a once-a-month thing due to his work schedule. Now it's several times a week and they both love it. Drew did need a little time to decompress from dad mode, so one night he and I went out to a bar for a few drinks. He told me about his plans to take Simon out of town on a father-son trip. Simon's just excited the hotel has a pool. Drew says he doesn't plan to date or do anything anytime soon. The ink's still dry on the divorce papers. I think being a single dad is what I want to be right now. He wants to focus on Simon and figuring out what life looks like for them going forward. As for Anna, she was initially busy balancing work, Simon, game nights, and a bunch of other responsibilities since she stepped up to help Drew. Things stabilized a lot faster than anyone expected, with the divorce resolving smoothly and Simon being the easiest child in the world to take care of. Now that Drew is using vacation time, she has had a bit more free time until he goes back to full-time work. So she's been catching up on some of her hobbies like baking and playing games on her Switch. I had to come over and run the cables to hook it up to her TV because she couldn't reach it. She also needed my help setting up her Wi-Fi when she got a new router. And she has had multiple issues with her laptop that I've had to resolve for her. That woman is brilliant in every other regard, but truly clueless when it comes to tech. But I was paid for my ticket resolutions in homemade meals. So I'll call it even. The more time I spent with Anna, the more confident I got that asking her out was the right call. So I asked her out and she said yes. Unfortunately, Anna gets migraines semi-regularly and one hit her just before our date. I came over and she was visibly miserable, but trying to convince me it was okay and we'd still go out. I practically had to order her to go get into bed. Got her migraine pills and some water for her. Blacked out the curtains and told her to call if she needed anything. She called me a few hours later asking for something to eat because she was feeling better, so I got her some dinner and ate with her. She kept trying to apologize, but I told her to make it up to me with another date the next day, which we were able to actually go on. It was a fantastic night. Had some amazing food and walked around town and talked, then went back to drop her off and we sat out in my car for another hour and talked. The last thing she said before getting out and running in was, "You're my boyfriend now, by the way," before shutting the door. I had no intention to argue even if she'd left me time to. Since then we've gone on a few more dates in our free time and we're both really happy with how things are going. It turns out Anna was a few days away from asking me out herself if I didn't make a move. She also hasn't stopped teasing me about Marty and his farts. And I told her about the werewolf Pierre Wolf I'm using soon and she won't stop patting my head and calling me the good boy. I'm not giving her character previews anymore. I guess that's it. In the last few weeks my life has changed so drastically it's insane. This may be strange to say, but thank you for sharing in this internet sharing circle thing that this became for me. I got fired for accidentally being an asshole to the company owner's disabled daughter. This happened on Friday. I've been drowning my sorrows all weekend, dreading the fact I have to start looking for a new job. Explaining why I got fired from my old job is going to be fun. I'm typing it up here to try and organize my thoughts in my head, because right now, it's all a mess. I had been with the company for 3 months and was still on orientation. My job was sales advertising. As the new guy, I was given existing accounts to manage, which consisted of providing customer service and convincing my clients to spend more money on advertising. All of these accounts already had their ad campaigns done, and if they wanted something new, the account was transferred to a senior account manager who would work with our advertising guys to put something together for the customer. Eventually, I hoped to have that job, but I had to pay my dues by proving I could maintain existing accounts and convince them to spend more money first. Everything was going great, until last week, when we were scheduled to have our quarterly retreat. Since we were the main regional office in the area, all of the employees from the satellite locations came to our office for the retreat. The owner of the company rarely visits our office. He's been overseeing the setup of a new satellite office for the last year, according to my coworkers. But he was there for the retreat, as was his disabled daughter, Amy. Not her real name for the sake of privacy. One of my coworkers told me Amy works at one of the satellite offices and I probably wouldn't have much interaction with her, but I should be nice. That seemed like a no-brainer. I'm nice to everyone regardless. I won't claim to be an expert on Amy's disability, but it seemed like she had childlike mannerisms and struggled with expressing herself. She also had some problem with motor skills. I'll describe the only interaction I had with her prior to the incident. I went to refill my coffee and Amy was in front of me, getting her coffee. I watched her struggle with getting condiments added and putting the lid on, so I politely asked if she needed any help. She thanked me, said she did, and let me finish making it. While I was making it, she said she hated coffee, but her dad made her drink it because she had to, in a loud voice, always alert. I smiled, said that was definitely important and handed her the cup. She thanked me again and went back to the office her dad was using, where she had been most of the day. I felt like I had been a good Samaritan and went on my way. Most of the retreat is team-building exercises. Prior to the incident, Amy only participated in the puzzle race, where groups put puzzles together without the box art to see which team can finish faster. Amy wasn't in my group, so I didn't have any interaction with her there. Neither of our teams won. The big event, and the one that everyone seemed the most excited for, was the last activity of the day. Our boss gave us a list of potential clients. We were supposed to select 3 as a group, and put together something to attract the customer. We were told we would be judged on our creativity. My group explained that we could do pictures, slogans, jingles, whatever we wanted. Each person expected to work on one individually, then work with their group to polish it up before it was presented to everyone. It was kind of a big deal because at previous retreats, there would be clients on the list the owner was already close to bringing on board, and if you impressed the owner, you might just land that account. I went with a jingle, rhymed a few words, and recorded it. It was silly but fit the brand. My group gave me some pointers, we made some improvements, and I recorded the final product for submission. I helped my team with their projects until it was time to turn everything in. After everything was turned in, we gathered in the big conference room to critique each other. The owner went through them one by one. If it was a picture or storyboard, he'd put it up, read it, and we'd make comments. Good or bad. There were some that were great, which drew a lot of compliments, and some that were really bad, which we laughed about as a group. You could tell the senior account managers didn't care much about the exercise or put much effort into their pitches. Nobody seemed to get upset or offended, regardless of the feedback. When my jingle was played, it got a lot of comments, not all of them good, and I took the feedback with a smile. After getting my feedback, I felt a little more comfortable about sharing my thoughts on other presentations. I gave what I thought was valuable feedback to a few products, laughed at a couple others, and then a rather crude drawing was put up for the exact same company I had chosen. I immediately joked that, well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw it? And laughed. To absolute silence. I was really confused because plenty of people had made jokes and everyone laughed. Instead, a few people looked at me like I was disgusting and the owner said, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep it yourself maybe? Then my boss scooted down to where I was sitting and told me I needed to go to my desk. Now, I noticed as I was gathering my things that the owner's daughter was red-faced and starting to tear up. The team building exercise was over for me. I went back to my desk and it began to sink in that the drawing must have been drawn by the owner's daughter. There was no warning or anything. The owner didn't reveal who put together what we were looking at until after a few critiques. Maybe I should have known. Everyone was joking and having fun up to that point. Someone else had a pretty bad drawing that got laughed at. Either way, I felt awful. As soon as the event was over, I approached my boss to apologize. He told me to wait for him in his office. Long story short, I was fired. My boss said since I was still on orientation, he had decided I wasn't a good fit for the company, so it was better to let me go now. He didn't outright say I was being fired for making fun of her drawing, but that's literally the only thing that I've ever gotten in trouble for. My work, up until that point, had been praised. I didn't get much time to process it because my boss had already called security, who showed up fairly quickly, and escorted me to my desk to gather my things before escorting me out of the building. An hour later, I got a call from one of my former teammates, who asked if I wanted to join the team for a drink one last time. They needed it after the retreat, and felt bad that they didn't warn me. I wasn't feeling up for it, but I wanted to try and make sense of the whole situation. So I went to the bar. In the back of my mind, I was thinking that since I'm about to start looking for a new job, a few references from former coworkers wouldn't be bad since I definitely won't be getting one from my boss or the owner of the company after everything that happened. The team explained that Amy comes to all of these retreats, and she always does some crude drawing like that. Everyone just sort of knows to say nice things about it and move on. One of my teammates said that once you've seen one of her drawings, you know what to look for. Well, I didn't, and nobody warned me. I started to get pretty upset that this was a known thing and everyone knew but me, but what could I do? I had already fucked up and it cost me my job. The team also shared more about Amy. Apparently she works at one of the satellite offices but doesn't really do anything. The people in charge of the office try to come up with stuff for her to do because she gets upset when she's bored. The team said the way the people who worked there described it, they were basically her babysitter, so she wouldn't bother her dad all day when he spent most of his time there. And after he moved on to establish the new satellite office, he didn't take Amy with him because she liked all the friends she had at that office. They also said that her dad had harassed a few single guys at the office to take her on dates, which seemed pretty damn HR inappropriate, but he does own the company. My team said Amy desperately wants a boyfriend and wants to get married, which she talks about all the time. The consensus seemed to be that there's no way she actually understands how relationships or marriage works, and her dad probably put this idea in her head to begin with. One of my teammates did joke that it wasn't a bad deal, because whoever married her would inherit the company since she is the old man's only kid. I wasn't really in the mood for jokes at that point after losing my job over one, so I told them I needed to go. The only good thing is my former team members did say they would gladly give me a reference if I needed it, since they felt so bad about not telling me about the Amy situation to begin with. Oh, and the cherry on top. Amy sent me a Facebook friend request over the weekend. I haven't accepted it. I already upset her and it cost me my job. Part of me wants to accept it, apologize, and block her, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that either. I'm going to take a few days to get myself together and then get my resume out there. Edit. After reading all of the replies, including quite a few DMs, and talking with a close friend, I've decided that I'm going to accept the friend request. I'll do an update if there's any sort of conversation. I plan to open with an apology. If she replies, great. If she doesn't, then at least I will have a clear conscience knowing I've done the right thing. Update. If you saw my first post, you know that I got fired because I accidentally made a joke at the expense of the company owner's disabled daughter, Amy. During the last team building event of the day, We were pitching ideas for accounts, which included everything from jingles, my pitch, to storyboards to slogans to drawings. A lot of senior account managers were phoning it in and people were making jokes about their work, which had a lot of people laughing. I got some jokes about my pitch, and got a little overconfident, so when a crude drawing went up for the same account I did my jingle for, I made a joke about it. The joke was, well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw it? My joke was met with stone-cold silence and a very negative reaction from the owner of the company. What my coworkers had failed to tell me was that Amy usually submits a crude drawing, which is a lot of work for her due to her issues, and everyone knows to say a few nice things and move on. I was new and wasn't informed, so my ignorance and inappropriate response cost me my job. After meeting with my team at a bar to begin the process of drowning my sorrows, I got a friend request from Amy on Facebook. That brings us to the update. First of all, thank you to everyone who made me laugh. The first time someone joked about me accepting the friend request, marrying Amy, and taking my revenge by inheriting the company made me uncomfortable. By the third time I saw it mentioned, I couldn't help but laugh. A lot of you gave me good advice. I appreciate those who talked about legal action and what options I had. Unfortunately, I was still on orientation with my company, which is like a probationary period. During that time, they can let me go for any reason. They could fire me for wearing the wrong color socks if they wanted. I had to sign an agreement to get employed which stated I understood this. There's literally nothing I can do, legally. At the end of the day, I decided to go have some drinks with a good friend, talk things out and see what he would do. Dave's been my best friend since we were in elementary school. We've probably spent more time together than some actual brothers. Dave was firmly on the side of accept the friend request, apologize, and clear your conscience, man. I'm getting us another round of shots. He knows me better than anyone, and he knows that the guilt would eat me alive. I posted it here because it bothered me. I decided to take his advice, and everyone here who pushed me for that as well, especially the ones that DM'd me. So that's what I did. I accepted the friend request. I immediately messaged Amy. I said I shouldn't have made that joke about anyone's work, it was unprofessional, and I was sorry. It took her a while to respond, but when she finally did, she thanked me for my apology, but said she sent me the request because she wanted to apologize since I lost my job over it. I said she didn't owe me an apology, and there was another long pause before she asked if she could copy-paste something to me. I wasn't sure what it was, but said she could. She pasted a generic message, but one she had clearly spent some time on. I don't want to type it word for word, but I'll paraphrase. Hi, my name is Amy. Please forgive me if I'm slow to respond to you. I suffered a brain injury when I was a little girl and it takes me a while to type things out. There was more to it, but that's the basic stuff. I responded, saying it was not a problem and she could take all the time she needed. Amy and I ended up messaging back and forth until almost 3 a.m. No, we didn't fall in love. We aren't going on a date. I'm not going to marry her for revenge so I can take her dad's company. However, I do think I would like to be friends with her. Not because I feel bad for her, but because she's a genuinely nice person and honestly, everyone could use a few friends like that. We spent a lot of time talking about her. That's just the direction it went, so I asked questions since she seemed comfortable talking about it. Amy was in a car accident when she was a kid. She was in the car with her mom and they were hit by a drunk driver, coming back from a birthday party for one of her classmates. Her mom didn't make it, and Amy suffered a brain injury that impacts her motor skills. Because it makes it difficult for her to speak and do simple things like getting dressed, making coffee, etc., people assume she's mentally challenged. She was put in special ed because of it, but worked really hard and graduated from high school. She even wanted to go to college, but her dad didn't think it was a good idea. Her life has been difficult because it's hard for her to communicate with people. By the time she can get a fully formed sentence out, the conversation is over. She can type, slowly, but most people don't want to type when they're face to face. She even admitted that when she's not at work, she will sometimes carry a tablet and pretend she's mute, because that's just easier. We eventually circled back to the drawing and my terrible response to it. She wasn't that offended by my response, because she assumed I didn't know. She got upset primarily, because she knew all hell was about to break loose and she had no way to communicate with anyone. She was so upset when she found out I got fired, and tried to talk to her dad, but he wouldn't listen to her. She's fully aware that a lot of people at the company just pretend to be nice to her because she's the owner's daughter, but she does have a few friends at the satellite office where she works who better understand her disability. She gets frustrated because she can't truly contribute anything, but is happy when they are able to find busy work for her to do. It might take her all day to do something another person could do in a couple of hours, But it's better than sitting around bored all day. She knows she's a burden and a bother to her dad when he's around, but he's her dad and she loves him. She wishes every single day she was a daughter he could be proud of, rather than a burden. She tries talking to him via emails and text messages, but he usually doesn't respond. If they're in the same location, he'll just walk over and respond verbally, which is frustrating, because it becomes a one-sided discussion with her unable to do anything but give simple one-word answers like yes or no. She also thanked me again for helping with her coffee. She said that when she was younger, she tried to do everything by herself, and would get mad when people helped her, but now she's learned to appreciate the few who do. Most just stand there and look away, pretending to patiently wait for her to do it on her own. It was getting late for both of us at that point. Really late. It takes her a long time to respond to messages. There's misspellings. I get why someone would assume she's mentally challenged. I myself referred to her in my first post as having childlike mannerisms, which was a misunderstanding on my part. When she tries to force words quickly or emphasize something, she gets really loud, which makes her sound like an excited toddler rather than an adult trying to have a conversation. We ended our talk last night agreeing to talk again sometime. She asked if I had watched the first episode of House of Dragon yet, which I have, and she asked if I'd like to talk about it after she watches it. I told her I'd love to. So that's it, that's the update. Sorry to those who expected me to steal her dad's company. I'm definitely not doing that. Talking to Amy did make me feel a lot better though. I don't know how I'm going to handle the whole firing thing at my next interview, but a few of you suggested I just leave a gap on my resume, and I may just do that. I doubt there will be any future updates, but at least this has a happier ending than my first post. TLDR, since a few asked for it in my first post. I lost my job, but I may have gained a friend. Edit, she loved House of Dragon. Supervisor demands cancer-stricken student turn on camera during virtual meeting. What happens next will shock you. There are two important background things to know for the story. 1. I was diagnosed with a rare ovarian cancer at the beginning of this year. I had surgery and some chemo and am mostly recovered now. I still have to go in for frequent testing and occasional monitoring. I am a private person to the extent that I have dated people for years without telling my parents, so you best believe random co-workers and bosses are unaware of my medical history. 2. I attend a university that has an ambassador program. Basically, if you have a high enough GPA, you are able to interview for the program, and if you get in, they pay for your tuition during the time you are an ambassador. In exchange, you work 5 hours a week and work graduation or other events. I am one of these ambassadors. This is my story. Law and Order sound effect. My supervisor for the ambassador program, Miss M, has spent the majority of our time together belittling me. As I sit here typing about her, I find myself already exasperated thinking about reliving some of the details, so I will be short and sweet for both your sake and mine. She follows every rule to the letter and leaves no room for collaboration or discussion. As an example, we use Microsoft Teams for communication, and she has us clock in and out in a group of 20 people by saying, "I'm here," and "I'm leaving." So every day you have to scroll through dozens of messages to find anything of import and listen to notification sounds every time someone so much as takes a lunch break. I suggested using the time clock function on Teams and even offered to set it up for us, and was told that I was deliberately undermining her position. Another quick example is her vehemence when I told her I didn't have any social media to advertise the college. She was certain I was lying and went so far as to ask the other ambassadors to try and find me. They didn't. There's nothing to find. Crazy concept. I've challenged her at a couple of junctures, but ultimately realized I was fighting a losing battle and I'd be better off keeping my head down. Laughs in dramatic irony. Fast forward to 4 days ago, Friday. There's a mandatory virtual event in 3 days, Monday, where the dean of the college would talk to the ambassadors, as well as live stream the event to the college's website and YouTube page. Miss M sent out a message that I will copy and paste here, because the formatting is so dramatic that it makes me chuckle. Students must have their cameras on and phones off. Repeat, phones off, cameras on. Like, come on lady, bold, caps, or italics. Your email almost gave me a stroke. I followed up the same day. Miss M, unfortunately I will be at a doctor's appointment at this time and will be unable to turn my camera on during the event. No response. I sent another email to follow up. No response. The day of the event rolls around. I directly messaged her through Microsoft Teams 10 minutes before. I see that she's seen the message with a red receipt. Nothing. Okay, video chat starts and several students join the session with their cameras on. Then the dean. He gets halfway through introducing himself and Miss M interrupts him as he takes a brief pause and says, "Excuse me, Could we please have all of the students turn their cameras on? I say nothing but put a quick message I already had typed in anticipation in the group chat. Miss M, I have a private situation that bars me from turning on my camera. I have contacted you individually. Not but a few seconds after I send it, I get called out by name, and I respond audibly, Miss M, I cannot turn on my camera at this time. And she responds, expectations were clear and you were told multiple times about this. Every other student here managed to do it and I expect the same out of you. Now, one of the cool things about having cancer is you become very familiar with the hospital staff, and if you're lucky, they're fun to talk to. During COVID, my nurses were my tethers to sanity because no one could visit me while I had inpatient infusions. So I told one of my nurses, Amy, about this situation beforehand. She joked that if I was told to turn my camera on, I should really play up my illness. In any other situation I would have been entirely opposed, but sweet revenge was in sight. When I replay it in my head I imagine that anime fist-clenching thing when the protagonist resolves to get revenge. I set my laptop back a bit further from myself on my legs so you could see the entirety of me in my hospital regalia. Teams will display the person currently talking as the largest image in chat. Everyone had their audio off except me, the dean, and Miss M, so when I turned my camera on I was displayed as the EKG loudly thrummed away, on max volume, thanks to Amy. Silence. Me. I asked Miss M through email and Teams if I could opt out of having my camera on, but she insisted. I waited a beat to see if anyone would say anything and then continued with my special vocal blend of melodramatic gratitude and illness-laden shakiness. Virtual engagement is so important for this new era of learning. I can see why having the camera on is important, though I was hoping I might be granted an exception. Dean. Miss R, you are more than welcome to turn your camera off. I am so sorry for the misunderstanding. Me. Thank you so much for making a special exception for me. It's been a difficult week but I feel grateful to be here. Then two people leave the call. One was Miss M and the other was Anthony, who is Miss M's boss. I didn't know he'd be there. Haven't heard from either of them yet but I'm awaiting a follow-up with anticipation. I'm typing this from the hospital and feeling gratitude for a lot of things. 'Tis the season after all. I am here, I am alive. And above all, this stupid disease won't stop me from putting a bully in their goddamn place. TLDR, I'm recovering from cancer and had to go in to be monitored for a separate but related condition. A supervisor for a school program insisted I turn on my camera for a virtual event that was live streamed, and when I turned my camera on, I could see I was very much hospitalized. Hilarity ensues. Cue sitcom music. 4 out of my 5 children are not mine, according to my recent DNA test. Nothing good comes out of a woman's silence. I apologize if this is not an appropriate sub to ask. I posted this on RR Relationships but it was locked, and the mod suggested I ask on R Parenting. But I also want relationship advice on how to deal with my wife, so I want to ask for advice here too. First of all, I'm sorry if this ends up being long and rambly. I am not really in the best state of mind. My world has been turned upside down over the last couple of weeks. I just want to write as much context as possible so I can get the best advice needed. For obvious reasons, I am not yet comfortable talking about this with my friends/parents/siblings. Background. I met my wife when we were in high school and we married in college. We have 5 beautiful children together. Really, I consider them a total blessing regardless of what I'm about to bring up. And up until a couple of weeks ago I thought that we had the perfect marriage. We were typical high sweethearts. We go out together, we never fight. I feel like I've done everything a loving husband should do. I am saying this not to make myself out as the perfect husband. For example, my work has always meant I work long hours and maybe haven't always been there when she needed me, but I want to stress that I've never felt our marriage was in any trouble. And never in a million years would I ever have suspected my wife of being disloyal. She's always done everything she could to support me and take care of our children. Now, my eldest daughter recently had an ancestry test done. And the results of the ancestry test strongly suggested I was not her father. She confided this to me privately, showing me the results, and I could tell she was visibly upset by this. Of course, the first thing I did was reassure her that no matter what, she's my daughter and I'll always love her unconditionally. But secondly, the two of us decided to get an official paternity test since the ancestry tests are not completely reliable. It comes back and I'm indeed not her biological father. This news really broke me. I'm ashamed to say I broke down in tears in front of my daughter. The combination of finding out about my wife's infidelity and how upset I was making my daughter by how I was reacting. I really wish I'd kept it in for her sake, but I didn't. Following this I asked my other children, except my youngest, to come and see me. I wanted to know the extent of my wife's infidelity. If it was a one-off, I could maybe work past it, especially given how long ago it would be. However, I didn't want to tell my youngest as she is still in school, a teenager, and really I didn't think it was appropriate to tell her yet. We tell the other three what has happened. I reassure them that I love them unconditionally and that I'll always be their dad, but that I need to know how long this has been going on. God, I can't begin to explain how touching their reaction was. They didn't care that I wasn't their biological father, they were just upset at how heartbroken I was. I feel like the only thing that has kept me going these last couple of weeks is their unwavering support. So we have paternity tests for each of the three done. Not only are none of them my biological children, together 4 of my children have 3 different fathers. Which somehow made it worse. It's like, she wasn't just having an ongoing affair, she was having multiple. I can't explain how this makes it worse, but it just does. So I confront my wife with this, expecting her to confess and beg for forgiveness. She doesn't confess. She doesn't even take it seriously. She says the test must be flawed. All 4. How the hell am I supposed to take that seriously? I keep bringing it up and she keeps brushing it off, getting progressively more annoyed at me. When I bring it up, she will try and guilt trip me. We've been together since high school, do you seriously not trust me? Etc. But how am I supposed to trust her in the face of such overwhelming evidence? Now that I have rambled and explained what has happened, I guess let me ask a few direct questions for advice. How can I reassure my children this doesn't change anything between us? I feel like the way I have reacted, total breakdowns, has made them second guess this despite however many times I reassure them. How do I handle my youngest daughter? I feel like our marriage is beyond saving, and I will need to tell my daughter something. I don't want her to know the truth until she's older. But I also don't want my wife lying and making me out to be the villain. Is there any way at all, you think I could or should save my marriage? I've been with my wife my entire life. It's almost impossible to see a life without her. I know that the answer should be a clear-cut leave her, but we have 5 kids together. If there's anything that can be done to save our marriage, I want to consider it seriously. Teal Doctor, found out at least 4 of my 5 kids are not mine. Wife refuses to confess her infidelity. Unsure of how to do what's best for my children and marriage. Edit. Thanks so much to everyone for all the support and advice. I have not replied to as many comments as I should have, but I've read each and every one and taken your advice to heart. I'll continue reading any comments or messages you send me. Again, I can't begin to thank you for all your support. If this is resolved, I might post an update, but if she continues to lie, then I don't think I'll bother, as there's not much more I can add. From the advice in this and the Arch parenting thread, I've decided to get second tests just in case some freak accident has occurred. Confront my wife with all 4 of my older children present, tell my youngest of the situation. Ask her if she wants to have a paternity test. It will be entirely her decision. I'm 100% going to get some form of therapy. My mental state has really been deteriorating over the last couple of weeks, and I owe it to my kids to hold it together. Depending on whether my wife tells the truth, and what her explanation is, if any, I have not ruled out some form of counseling. But at the moment I think divorce is inevitable unless she changes her attitude drastically. Contact a lawyer and prepare for divorce, if it comes to that. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for the time you took to express your support and share advice. Edit 2. I guess I should clarify some things that people have been asking. How did the ancestry results suggest I wasn't her father? My family is entirely Irish. No relatives outside of Ireland other than my immediate family, and I even have the stereotypical red hair. My daughter's ancestry results showed nothing from the British Isles, Western Europe, Northern Europe. That's what set off alarm bells, but it's by no means conclusive, hence the paternity tests. Which 2 children share the same father? My 2 eldest daughters share the same father. How did your wife conceive your children? Our eldest daughter was not planned. All the others were planned. Each time we conceived several months after we started trying. Our first 3 planned children were both our ideas, while she pressured me into having our youngest. She was in her late 30s and wanted one last child before it was too late, and eventually I agreed. She was conceived several months after we started trying too. Are you infertile? I don't know. I've never had a fertility test done. But the fact that none of our planned children are mine makes me think that I might be. I will have a fertility test as soon as possible. Update 1. I have received a lot of messages, comments asking about an update, and countless remind me of comments. I am unsure how they work, but I assume they are also after an update. I will post an update, but it will not be anytime soon. This entire mess will take a long time to, make any sense out of. I don't know when I will post an update, but it will be weeks from now at a minimum, if not months, but I promise it will come eventually. Once again, Thanks for the tremendous support everyone has shown me. Update 2. I have been debating whether or not to post an update, because nothing was ever resolved. I decided I would post it here in case anyone is still waiting for one. I apologize for not updating early when I promised I would. My kids and I confronted their mother shortly after making that Reddit post. It really didn't go well. I think the prospect that no one believed her finally hit home, because she completely broke down and apologized profusely, but refused to explain herself, or anything that would give myself peace of mind. For the next few weeks we barely said a word to each other. I was hoping she was thinking it over, and I expected her to eventually sit me down and explain herself. I figured she was so far deep in a lie that got out of control, she needed time to think things over. Nope. I came home one evening to find she had committed suicide by overdosing. So I lost the love of my life, and I'll never know what mistakes she had made. I really wish I could go back in time and forget about it all. Whatever mistakes she made, I honestly wanted to work through it, and now I'm just riddled with guilt that I pressed her for an answer. The worst part of this entire ordeal was watching my kids work so hard to keep me together, after having lost their mother. Anyway, please tell your family you love them while you have the chance. I discovered my ex-wife was feeding our kids turpentine daily and had to fight to protect them, gain custody and help them heal from the trauma. May 1st, 2021 on r/relationship_advice. I found this out, like I do most things about life with their mother, through the kids, M7 and F5, as communication has been pretty much non-existent between the ex and I since our split 6 years ago. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, I don't ever press my kids for information. I've worked very hard to establish an uninhibited, open, no topic is off limits type of relationship with my kids. Even though I've only got them every other weekend, I want them to feel comfortable enough to fully express themselves and speak their mind freely around me. This has led to several discoveries about certain aspects of their life that their mother has asked them not to reveal to me, something I'm very much against. I don't believe any child should have to hold secrets between their parents. It isn't their responsibility and is something I would never ask of them. That being said, they've come out with nuggets of wisdom such as we shouldn't be drinking tap water because the government puts chemicals in there that makes us docile and obedient. Santa isn't real. But Jesus is, and the Bible is 100% fact. Controversial topic, I understand. And most recently that the government says turpentine is poisonous but it is actually good for you. What the hell do I do here? If I speak to my ex about this, or even let slip that I know it's going on, she isn't going to have an honest conversation about it with me, and I fear that she'll just press the kids even harder to keep things from me. I don't want their heads filled with this rubbish, but I feel so powerless to stop this. All I can do is try to teach them to think critically, but that is only going to be so effective when they're getting told all this nonsense is fact. Help. Edit. I spoke to my children about it and recorded the conversation to ensure there was no confusion about what was being said. They were being fed a spoonful of turpentine every day by their nana for the past 4 weeks while they were all away on holidays, but there is zero chance my ex wasn't aware this was happening. Definitely turpentine. 100% pure gum turpentine. My boy said the bottle read. The distilled stuff, he said. They even started singing that Mary Poppins song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the turpentine go down." Feel like I'm in an alternate timeline. Thank you everyone for being so helpful. I appreciate it so much. Edit. The talk screen won't be happening until we get a referral. Poisons Hotline has no literature on hand for chronic exposure to turpentine, let alone in children, but the kids don't seem symptomatic. We will be visiting either a GP or the hospital first thing tomorrow for a full checkup, and a report will be made separately to that of the medical mandatory report. I don't really see a scenario playing out where CPS isn't getting involved here, and I can't not have my kids medically assessed knowing that this has been going on. Currently preparing for the shitstorm that's bound to ensue. Comments. Deleted user. Sorry, but you found out your ex-wife is poisoning your kids and your response is to get on Reddit instead of taking your kids to the hospital and contacting authorities. Hopefully this is as fake as it seems. OOP. Ex-wife. The kids seemed asymptomatic. Had I not been made aware of this, I probably would never have known anything was up. That being said, my mother is a nurse and we did have the kids looked at. Yes, I came to Reddit as one source among several for guidance because I had no F*C king clue what to do about this or even what my options were. I try not to act rash or emotionally impulsive when it comes to my children. I try to weigh up my options. My father has a muddy history, so even though he's not the same person he was 15 years ago, a CPS investigation has potential to forcefully alienate my children from their grandparents. That's just one example of what factors into this. I wish this were fake. Deleted user. What the fuck? Asymptomatic? Dude, they've told you she's poisoning them. You should have immediately taken them to the hospital, regardless of whether you can see symptoms. I don't care if your mom is a nurse, she can't run tests by looking at them. Anyway, I still am not convinced this is real, but if it is, what you just said about your dad makes this all more confusing and sketchy. Take your kids to the hospital and seek legal help. OP, we spoke to the hospital man, we called ahead. There was literally nothing they were prepared to do for us other than what we had already done. They wouldn't run tests unless the kids were exhibiting symptoms or they had a referral, even after telling them what was going on. The nurse was very apologetic, but it is what it is. Best they could offer was a place 2 hours away that wouldn't open until tomorrow anyway. I know what you're saying, but it just isn't that simple. And yeah, I understand that seems sketchy. I guess it kind of is. There's no legal help I could possibly get on a Sunday evening and no way we could move things forward without rushing into it. We are going through everything tomorrow, properly and thoughtfully. Fast walking short guy, Jesus Christ. Record some evidence, send it to the cops, and have your ex imprisoned for child endangerment at the very least. This type of potato is going to start feeding them fucking bleach or urine sooner than later, not even joking. She is a dangerous level of stupid that your kids should not be forced to suffer. It is your responsibility to take action to protect them from her. OOP. Unfortunately, the only evidence I have is a second-hand verbal account of the testimony of a 7-year-old boy. He told my mother, his grandmother, who is a career nurse, who promptly told me what was going on. She's 50 shades deep into crazy conspiracy theories herself, and even she was mortified upon hearing this. My ex won't say or admit to anything, and I don't trust her to be honest. If her custody arrangement is on the line, it's all just conjecture at this point. Fast walking short guy, hire a private eye. Get evidence. It's your responsibility as a parent to protect your children. You can't be so passive. Do something. OOP. I agree, it is my responsibility. I have zero intention of being passive about this, I just see my current options hitting a lot of dead ends. That's why I've come here. If I'm going to go the legal route, I want to move it through clean. Calculated. No room for error. He said, she said BS won't even get me a seat in the courtroom. Private investigator could be something worth following up though. Thank you. Fish guts cake. Those poor kids. Good idea picking this idiot to mate with. OP. Yeah, look, I've got no good defense for that. Changed a lot after she got her ring though. There's a reason I'm not still with her. May 2nd, 2021 on ER Legal Advice and ROS Legal. So I just found out through my kids that my ex-wife has been feeding them turpentine mixed with sugar or honey as a way to warm them, and also been using it topically to treat mosquito bites. They are 7M and 5F, reading up on what it does if you ingest it, because who the hell would ever think it's a good idea to drink paint thinner as medicine? It can be devastating, and it really doesn't take a whole lot to mess you up, especially if you're a child. Think, 1 tablespoon could potentially be enough to change your life. I don't think talking to the ex is going to yield any results, and realistically I don't even expect her to be honest about it anyway. My only evidence so far is the second-hand account of the testimony of a 7-year-old boy. He told my mom, his grandma, and she went and told me. Do I have any legal options here? Should I be collecting evidence, and if so, what kind? I honestly don't know what to do. I can't have my kids being fed literal poison, and to top it off they were saying, yeah, the government tells us it's poison but it's actually good for you. This isn't the first time they've come out with little nuggets of conspiracy-soaked wisdom like this, tap water makes you docile and obedient sort of stuff, but this one is truly terrifying. They were meant to go back to their mother today, but I've got them in my care until next weekend due to an undisclosed emergency that my ex sprung on me about an hour ago. Never mind that I'm starting a new job tomorrow and wasn't prepared in any way to look after them for a week with no notice. But please, if anyone here can give me a few tips or pointers, I would be so grateful. I'm stressing pretty bad about this. I don't know what to do. Edit. I'm located in Victoria, Australia, if that makes any difference to the situation. May 2nd, 2021 on RR Ask Docs. So for the last 4 or so weeks my kids, 7M and 5F, have been ingesting a spoonful of turpentine every day, and been using it topically to treat mosquito bites. 100% gum turpentine. My boy said the bottle read, paint thinner. I've questioned them about it and I have zero doubt this was happening. Now I've wanted to book in for a tox screen and blood work but would have to travel 2 hours to get it done, the only other option being police and CPS, both unfavorable options, or seeing a GP. What am I in for here? What damage would chronic ingestion of turpentine cause a 7-year or 5-year child? What are the things I should look out for? Would terps even show up in a screen in such a small volume? And if there's anyone here from Victoria, Australia, would a GP be able to help initiate a tox screen? May 2nd, 2021 on AITA toxicology. The contents of this post were not able to be recovered. However, this comment was deemed relevant, as it has information about turpentine therapy. Solomon Gilbert, MOD. I'm sorry to hear of this happening. Usually, we wouldn't allow medical advice requests, but this is an exception. Turpentine has been touted as an alternative medicine cure-all, as has been amplified by misinformation on the internet. Please seek immediate medical assistance from a trained healthcare professional and take any discussions surrounding medical advice here with an enormous pinch of salt. That said, this subject is very important to discuss and could help others who may have come across similar cases. OOP, my apologies. I will admit I didn't carefully look through the rules of this sub before posting. I did stumble across this particular school of thought this evening, unfortunately, whilst researching the effects of turpentine ingestion. It saddens me to learn of its existence, but honestly I'm not as surprised nor shocked as I feel I should be. Understandably, advice from strangers on the internet will never be a credible substitute for a trained professional opinion. Sorry guys. But I do appreciate your concern and the willingness of those who helped. Thank you. May 3, 2021 in a comment on the r/docs post. Update on the situation. The kids have been medically assessed. They've had blood work done, testing for liver and kidney function, as well as any other abnormalities, and have undergone some minor testing. Thankfully, everything has come back clear and they seem to be happy and in good health, apart from my daughter being a little upset about being jabbed with needles. There were, however, some very concerning statements made by my kids to the doctors who screened them, both with and without any family present. Everything said has been transcribed and documented in their discharge papers. CPS has since been informed of the situation. The situation has been reported to the police and a medical release statement has been filed with them. They told me they would remain in contact with CPS and wait for their lead. The kids are legally staying within the care of myself and my family until further notice from Child Services. At this point in time, I've had no contact with my ex since this all came about. I have a tip on a great family law legal representative whom I will contact in the very near future to discuss my steps moving forward, and about making a claim for primary custodial care. My family fully supports this decision and we are all still incredibly shocked about this whole scenario. I am on the verge of having an absolute meltdown, but things actually seem okay for now. My kids are safe. I couldn't be more grateful for how supportive my family and friends have been over the last couple of days. Thank you to everyone who gave me their advice and support. I appreciate every one of you. Please do not feed your children turpentine. UDG. I can pretty much guarantee that if you're buying bottles labeled 100% pure gum spirits, or whatever, they look like this rather than this, and the warning label basically comes with a wink and a nod for free OOP. Actually it looked like this. Literally has poison impressed down the side of the plastic bottle, complete with all the expected warning labels. Straight from the paint section at Bunnings. Update as of September 2023, September 22, 2023 on his profile, 2 years after the original posts, 2 days after the Boru post. Just an update on things since everything went down and maybe provide a little clarity on a few key details. Not that it's necessary to me that you believe my story, Reddit being what it is and all, but bear with me as I haven't really spoken about the topic with anyone outside of my partner in a very, very long time. There will be a few additional details that won't be mentioned for discretionary reasons and active actions currently in place. Not very brief. Sorry. I'll start by stating that the kids have been in my full care since that first post and are very happy and healthy. The mother has placed the entirety of blame on the grandmother and remains steadfast in that stance to this very day. The month prior to my post they spent camping as a family, the kids and their mum's immediate family. They spent that entire time in her care and there is no way she wasn't privy to what was happening. Every goddamn day. The kids had a fucking song to sing about it. All substantiated in statements taken from them. So as a few have speculated, yes, this happened in regional Victoria. A couple hours from Melbourne. The hospital here could have taken the kids in for screening through ER, but they didn't have the facilities to actually test the blood work on site. The turnaround for a result, I was told, would have been a few days, possibly longer, as it had to get sent off. Alternatively, I could just wait until the following day to make the trip to the nearest facility that was capable of producing same-day results. We took that option. The kids were triaged the following day through ER. Tested for organ functionality, blood work came back clean. They were privately spoken to and assessed by on-site well-being officers, or whatever their title, and CPS was contacted through the hospital and a case opened. Note, yes, we do call them child protection here even though they operate under the DFFH banner. But so does Community Housing and Disability Support, in tangent with NDIS, So do with that information as you will. It's a broad department. We left with the medical reports, which included statements given by the children, and holy fuck were they being fed some wild facts about the world. That night I made an informal statement at the local police station stating what the situation was and the actions taken, just so they had it on record. For those tracking the chronology of all this, we are roughly 30 HRS into the timeline from me first finding out. CPS conducted several interviews over the next month with all parties involved, as well as a house call to my residence. Not sure how extensively they interviewed the mom. They concluded the children unfit to be in the mother's care but were comfortable in closing their case should they remain with me full time. Surprisingly, there was no legal order put in place. Apparently they are happy to move on from a situation once comfortable with the results. Found a good law firm and started the legal process, which has been very slow due to a, unsurprising, lack of cooperation. Essentially though, we have restricted the mother's access to supervised visitation and removed her parental right as a legal actor regarding medical decisions. She has only seen them a handful of times in the 2 years following, despite constant efforts to facilitate visitation. The kids have had therapy and I've spent many hours talking to them over the last 2 years, helping them navigate their way through this. They'll have a lot of questions they'll expect answers for when they're older, I'm sure. Currently, we have managed to secure scheduled visitation with the mother through a professional contact center which facilitates supervised visits. It has been a fucking wild ride, but we are incredibly lucky and happy to have the strong family unit we currently do, including my partner and her daughter who have been next to us through most of this process. Please teach your kids it's safe to be honest and open with you. I ended my relationship after my ex secretly bought an $87K truck, and now he has also returned it. I'm very annoyed. He didn't even speak to me about it. We had so many discussions about moving in together, getting married, and then he goes and purchases a truck $2K more than his yearly salary. If you're asking how a truck can be $87K, that's the price you get when you put every addition you want on it. He showed me the truck expecting me to be excited and I was livid. When he bought this truck, we were only a month from moving in together. We got into a bad argument where he told me it was his money and he could do whatever he wanted with it. So I said fine, and I told him I'm not comfortable moving in with him anymore. I asked my landlord if my apartment was still available and if I could renew my lease, and they said yes. Now my BF is saying he can't afford his place and his truck. I don't feel bad. You should have thought of that before buying something so expensive without talking to your GF of 2 years. I have had some of his friends' GF reach out to me and say I should support him, and one even says that I'm not loyal, and this shows I wouldn't support him if we were married since I run away when finances get bad. That's bullshit. He didn't lose his job or get hurt. He bought an expensive item without discussing it. I have been trying to get him to return the truck because it's already affecting his finances badly. He has only had this truck for 2 weeks and he is worried that in the next month or two, he won't be able to cover all the expenses he usually has. This past weekend, we had another argument and I think our relationship is going to end. I'm not helping him pay for this truck and I'm not moving in with him. I have asked for a break and will be thinking about what to do. Edit. I appreciate the different opinions everyone has given me. I have a lot to think about. To answer 2 questions, no, he doesn't need the truck. He works from home, and if he has to check in at work, he has an office. Also, his friends and their girlfriends know about this issue because he asked for their views when we went to a get-together last week. Only 2 GFS reached out to me to tell me I wasn't being supportive. The others have minded their business. Comments. Comment 1. Good job recognizing a bad situation when you see one. This dude fully expected you to supplement his lifestyle after moving in together. All his money would have gone to paying that truck, leaving you stuck with the lion's share of the bills. And that's why he's panicking now. Stay in your own apartment, OP. Comment 2. And he had the audacity to say that it was his money and he could do what he wanted with it, knowing full well he would have to live out of the truck if OP didn't supplement for him. Really tells you what he thinks about OP's money, that it's his money too. Entitled ass. I would dump him so hard. Comment 3. Reeks of my money is mine but your money is ours. Dump any moron who spends $1,700 a month on a 5-year loan for a toy while being unable to make rent. Update. 6 days later. Yay, so I broke up with him mainly because I realized we aren't financially compatible. Before I go into what happened, I do want to say something. I understand we weren't married, but we were both moving together into a new place and had several discussions about this move and our plans for the future, including marriage. For the people private messaging me saying it's his money and he can do whatever he wants, or, you're only 2 years into a relationship, you're not a wife. I know that, and I have never asked what is in his bank account or told him what to do financially. I'm aware it is his money, but I also know his financial situation and he was making decisions without my input that, if we were to stay together, would not only affect him but also our relationship and our financial situation for years to come. I will die on this hill. This is not okay, and if it's okay for you, that's fine, but for me, if we make a financial plan and you make a huge decision without me, I won't be okay with it, and that's a big reason why I backed out of moving into a new apartment with him. I would have never made a decision like this without his input at all. The main reason why we decided to move in together was to take the next step in our relationship but also to pay down our debts. I now have $22,000 debt from student loans and a car. When I met him though, it was around $60,000 and I was basically living on credit cards. Within the first couple of months of us dating, I saw how hard he worked, and with a salary of $85,000, he was making huge progress in paying off his loans and credit cards. On my end at the time, I was only making $50,000. I honestly saw his work ethic and was like wow, and got serious about my debt. I got a second part-time job where I was making $32,000 a year, bringing my salary to $82,000. I did that so that I could pay off my debts faster, but also so that we could be on equal footing when we moved in together and he didn't have to pay significantly more in living expenses than me when he had more debt. We did a complete budget months before we moved in together and realized that we would each have $700 extra a month to put towards our own individual budgets. This is why the purchase of this truck was so surprising to me. We had planned this move for months. We had a budget and he destroyed that plan with the truck. If he wanted a new car, there are plenty of cars he could have gotten that would have fit into the $700 monthly surplus he had. Anyway, for the past few days before we broke up, he tried to show me that this truck was a good financial purchase and we could still move in together. He told me that he had actually budgeted for this and could show me how he could afford this. I wanted to hear him out, so I went to his place and he had two budgets. He said he had been thinking of getting this truck for some time and he had worked out a budget beforehand. He showed me the first budget, and after his truck, insurance, expenses, and his debts, he was left with $115 for the month. I noticed with the first budget, he didn't include groceries, his hobbies, going out, or even gas for his car. I asked him how $115 was enough to live off of for an entire month. I asked him how he could afford all of this and his truck, and if he planned to give up some things. He said no, he didn't plan to give up anything and that he could make everything work in his budget. I asked him what if he had an emergency or needed gas for his truck, and he just kept saying he would work it out without explaining how. After I saw the first budget, I asked to see the documents for the car, and that's how I found out the truck price was $95,000 total after taxes, registration and fees. He traded in his reliable 2003 Toyota and all his savings to get a loan at 14% for 72 months. His monthly payment is now $1,966 and insurance is $573. He also still has student loans which are significant. I kept telling him $115 left over monthly wasn't enough. That's when he showed me his second budget, which had a combined higher monthly income. I asked him if he was getting a second job, and he said due to his job relying on him to be on call, he couldn't. I asked where the income was coming from, and this man said, "Well, you're getting a raise soon." I froze because I had mentioned this raise once months ago. My first job is my career job, and I work in a field where when you hit certain milestones, you get a pay bump. In September, if my raise is approved, I will go from $50,000 to $80,000, and with my second job, my total yearly income will be $112,000. But getting the raise isn't a guarantee. You have to meet certain criteria, and if you don't, you have to wait 3 months before trying again. When he said that, I was quiet, and then I said, "So you planned a budget that included additional income that I wouldn't get for at least 6 months and income that I might not even get in September?" He said when I got my raise, the ratio of what he would pay would decrease and he would have more disposable income. I asked him why it was okay for him to plan budgets with my income, but yet I had no say in how he spent his. He couldn't answer that. I told him I had no issue with paying more bills if I got a raise, but the fact that he banked on that, didn't discuss it, and now expects me to be okay with this is ridiculous. I also said there's no way I wouldn't be paying more with the first budget because he wouldn't have been able to survive on $115. I told him he didn't communicate, and this is on him because he made huge financial plans without discussing anything. Finally, I told him I would never have done any of this without going to him first because I thought we were a team that was building something. I ended things the next day, and he has been trying to reach out, but I'm not interested. He has financially crippled himself with this truck. If with my income now he could barely make it, he sure isn't making it on his own. I really hope that things work out for him and he is able to keep his truck and recover, but I'm not paying the consequences for such a massive financial mistake that is going to hugely affect him for years to come. If I were to stay, this financial decision affects me as well and would continue to affect both of us for years. Again, this is different from becoming ill or losing a job. He chose this and refuses to budge and fix it. I now realize we are not financially compatible and that's okay, and I wish him the best. Edit. Thanks everyone for all the support. I don't hate my ex and I really hope he's able to recover from this. It was such a learning lesson for me in how one mistake can ruin you financially. It has made me even more cautious but also determined to keep working towards a better financial future for myself. Comments. Comment 1. You are very smart. I have a wife like you and we are going to retire comfortably because of that. Comment 2. People who will give her grief over this either have no idea how marriage is supposed to work or are bad with their finances. Financial incompatibility is a huge deal in relationships, and she is being incredibly mature here. Comment 3. All I have to ask is, how are you handling this with so much grace? I would be pissed if my ex, who I was so emotionally invested in, pulled this on me. It's not just that he made an irresponsible decision, it's the fact that he thought he could leech off you and your money to pay for it and somehow blindside you to get away with that. You don't badmouth him a single time and did the right thing immediately, break up, and have already accepted that you both are incompatible. I'm in awe of how decisive and yet non-aggressive you were. I wish I could be that way. OP, to answer your question about why I'm not bad-mouthing him, it's because I'm sad. I'm sad about what he did to himself and that I had to leave because he isn't seeing how bad this is. I'm sad that just a few months ago, I was planning on living together in a life and now that's gone. Most of all, I'm sad for him. He was doing so well and he rubbed off on me immensely in terms of paying off debt and watching your spending. I'm sad that he threw away all his hard work. Dumping on him even more isn't worth it because when he realizes this mistake, it will be so bad for him. I don't see a point to do it, but I'm not judging anyone who would in these circumstances. New update. 7 months later. Update. I posted a few months ago about ending my relationship with my ex who bought an $87,000 truck without telling me. Going ahead with that decision means that I paid off my student loans this past month. He also returned the truck. Hi everyone. So I posted a few months about a situation I was dealing with my ex and him buying a car without telling me. I really doubted myself when I first made my first post because I had received such strong negative reactions from other people about me wanting to back out of the move. I appreciate the comments I got not only on the posts but through the messages as well. It really helped solidify for me that these feelings I had about the situation shouldn't be ignored. So thank you guys for responding because it saved me financially. Looking back at the situation now months later, I can see that I was being set up to be financially abused. When I broke up with my ex, I thought that we were financially incompatible and that unfortunately it took this large purchase to see it. But I can see now, that's not the case. My ex made a plan in his head and what made sense to him was for me to pay most of the expenses and he thought this was okay and that I should be okay with it too. Even though I can see the reality of what he was trying to do, I can't hate my ex because he helped start me on this path of looking at my finances. I remember when we first started dating and I went to pay for an item I was getting and my card declined, and without batting an eye, even though it was a little embarrassing, I took out another card and paid. I was used to this happening every once in a while, because I was literally living paycheck up to paycheck. I'm not putting down anyone where that's the case. But in my situation then, I was living way above my means. I would justify every single one and get it, and I thought because I was making minimum payments and on time, I wasn't as bad as the next person. When the situation with my card happened, after we got back to my ex's car, he kindly asked if this type of thing happens all the time and I told him sometimes, and he basically gave me advice. He did not try to force me to stop spending. He asked me to track my purchases and recommended a few apps. The first 2 months that we were seeing each other, he would encourage me every other day or every once in a while to just track what I spent, to shop like I usually did, but to track everything. Being able to see how much I was spending, especially when I broke it down into categories, was astounding. There was one month I spent $68 on bagels. It wasn't for work. It wasn't for other people. It was me stopping at a bagel place every morning and getting a bagel. I would sometimes get variations, which is why the bagels cost so much. Once I realized how much I was spending on stupid things, my ex helped me make a plan that would work for me, and that plan has continued to consistently work. I have added to it and changed things or tweaked things as my financial status has continued to improve, and so far, so good. This is why I don't have any bad feelings about my ex. He never pushed for me to pay my bills in front of him. He never saw credit card statements on apps, nothing. He only kept encouraging me to look at my finances and fix them. He helped give me the foundation to start to manage my finances, and I thought in my head that we were on the same page. And because he was such a stickler for finances and he was so frugal, that is why this truck purchase was such a surprise to me. It was unplanned, not discussed, was a large amount of money, and, just knowing the general view of how much debt he had, I know without a doubt that there was no way he could afford this truck. I'm not trying to paint my ex as a saint. I am explaining why he had such a positive impact on me financially. So when the truck purchase happened, and he refused to budge, I honestly was shocked, and seeing how bad this situation was, I had to walk away. It's been about 6 months since everything's happened, and I'm doing very well. I recently paid off my student loans last month. I now only have my car left, so 12 grand left to pay. I also have a small savings. Because of that, I have changed the focus, and I'm putting the majority of my income now towards my car. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm definitely living within my means, and I'm okay with that. The last two things I'm updating on are my raise and my ex's truck. I had a few people message me about the raise, and unfortunately I did not get it due to a big mistake I made on a project. Once I realized the mistake, I knew that it would jeopardize things for my raise because I had made the mistake so close to my evaluation and I didn't get the raise. But I fixed the mistake, and when I get re-evaluated after 3 months, I am hopeful I will get it this time. Losing the possibility of the raise made me realize even more that I had made the right decision, because I would be so screwed right now if I hadn't ended my relationship. With my ex, we have spoken once, and that is when we broke up. I cut communication completely, because he was still trying to fix things without addressing the truck and the fact that he was keeping it. I know from a person close to him that actually 4 months after we broke up, he did a voluntary repossession. I also know the truck is gone, because he deleted all the pictures he had of it. I was actually relieved to hear that for him, because he can hopefully start to fix the situation he got himself in. I really do want the best for my ex, and I don't know the thought process that led to him getting this truck, or what could have influenced him, but hopefully he can get back to where he was and make more improvements. The relationship is finished and there is no hope of rekindling anything. Even though he returned the truck, I could never go back to him because the trust is gone. It wasn't only the money. It was also him making such a vital decision without me, expecting me to go along with it, and then vilifying me when I had viable concerns. I can't move past that. Yes, money isn't everything, but I can't stop thinking about what my life would be like now had I stayed. My student loans would not be paid off. We would both be broke. We would both be in worse off financial positions. All of these things would have affected the relationship negatively, which would have made it unhealthy. I'm glad we broke up, and I have forgiven him for what he tried to do to me. I stand, and I will continue to stand by the view that finances are a breakable offense, especially when your partner isn't listening to you and does something that will affect both of you. If you don't agree, that's fine, but these last few months have proved that to me. So that's my longish update, and again, I really want to say thank you guys for responding to my first post. I honestly was leaning towards staying with him and not moving in, and I think in the long run, I would have been financially devastated and taken advantage right now, and because of the different opinions I read, it made me realize how bad not only the situation was, but also how bad it could get. So thanks. A very, 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 very small, humble brag. I posted my paid in full student loan email on my profile, so if you want to see that, you can click that post, but you don't have to. Sorry, I'm just so proud of that fact. Okay, bye. Comments. Comment 1. Congratulations on paying off your loans. Glad you stuck to your decision and things working out for you. Comment 2. I can tell you what motivated or was the catalyst for his decision to buy the truck. It was you mentioning your possible raise. He always wanted the truck, but learning you'd be making more, he jumped the gun and purchased it in advance. He was betting on the raise. He didn't think of the possibility that you wouldn't get it. He thought it was a guarantee. Honestly, be glad he did it when he did. Could you imagine if he waited until you did move in together? Then you'd be more trapped due to having signed a lease with him. He would have screwed your credit, even if you couldn't help him pay for the truck. Having your name on the lease and him not paying his portion would affect you. He also would have guilted you into helping by paying more, even if you still only made the same amount, because he'd be struggling. I couldn't imagine if you had gotten the raise, he'd probably guilt you into keeping your second job, because then you could help him more. Glad you stuck to your decision. I get it's his money to do with as he wishes. However, he seemed to think, as did those who sided with him, that your money was his too. That he could make decisions about your money and how it was spent, but you couldn't do the same. Honestly too, you didn't try to control his decision or his money. You were controlling what happened to your money. Jealous wife demanded an open marriage, cheated with her ex, and stalked me when I moved on. Now she wants to close our marriage. I, 39M, and my 37F wife have been married for 15 years. Our 2 children are a boy aged 12 and a 14-year-old girl. My wife came to me roughly 1.5 years ago requesting an open marriage. She claimed she wanted to see more and was bored with just us. Since I really think marriage is between two people, I was quite against this. My wife had only been with me, while I had 5 sexual partners at the same time we were getting married. She made it plain that she was ready to file for divorce or that we open things up. Neither of us wanted that, so I consented under specific conditions. None brought back to the house, we don't discuss partners, the kids don't know, family doesn't know, all partners are tested ahead of time, none that we both know, etc. My wife went out and did not return until 4 a.m., so my strong suspicion, that she had someone in mind, was validated 24 hours after we decided. I wanted to save my marriage, but I was really not good with it and found it difficult. Last May I ran across Amber. Together our daughters are in the marching band. Amber is divorced and has no desire in getting married once again. She does have once, like everyone else on the planet. 5 months after the marriage opened, I started sleeping with Amber. Though initially it felt like cheating, really it's good to have something no strings where neither of us wants it to move forward. I grew at ease with the notion that my wife and I could satisfy our desires both inside and outside of our marriage over time. We were far happier and our sex life was indeed far more passionate. In April, amid the coronavirus, my wife and her sidemate, who I never met, stopped seeing each other. From what I understand, his wife is unaware and it was difficult to get away even though he is in an open marriage. We helped plan a fantastic Zoom concert for the band students in May. Though my wife met Amber for the first time, well, I believe Amber has been open with a couple of the mothers since it came back to my wife that Amber was her outside partner. As we both know Amber, my wife told me I had to call it quits with her. I turned down, pointing out that neither of us know her ahead of time and that our meeting followed the guidelines we set. She has told me several times over the past month that she is unhappy with me sleeping with Amber and that I should call off the arrangement. Remember that she was good for a year while she was with her boyfriend. She came to me this weekend and said she wanted to reopen our marriage under closure. I told her I was open to that as long as we decided it would stay closed going forward. She agreed that she wants that as well, that she doesn't need any more partners, and that she would be content with just me. We might agree to dissolve the marriage under 2 conditions, the first I mentioned above, and the second I wanted her to sign a document waiving spousal support should divorce come about. She started to flip. She flatly refused to even give that any thought. Since we married, my wife hasn't worked. If she signed, she suggested, I could keep seeing Amber and leave her empty-handed. I told her I would be ready to add a list of mutually agreed upon events, including adultery on my side, wherein the agreement would be worthless. She claims it's not open for conversation and she won't be left with nothing or kept cheated on when I choose to leave her for Amber. I pointed out that she came up with this entire thing and that I merely followed her to keep our marriage strong. She believes that should we fail to close the marriage, it would as well be over. I informed her I would not put up with being threatened with divorce each time her demand was denied. She thinks I should concentrate on us and I'm acting dramatically. Should I agree to be free from conditions? As we both agreed it was only physical, I know there is no future with Amber. Even though I know I am keeping my ground, I feel like I am blowing apart my marriage over a dead end. Simultaneously, I doubt Amber at all is the focus here. Update 1. As a result of what several of you have mentioned in this thread, I called Amber this morning, reminded her that we were supposed to keep things confidential, and inquired about the person with whom she had disclosed the specifics of our romantic relationship. I didn't get the impression that she was lying when she denied that she had told anyone about it. After retrieving the history of my wife's Google timeline, I found out that she had followed me to Amber's residence in the month of April using Google. After following me, she purposefully presented herself to Amber in order to provoke a conflict between the two of them. I was under the impression that she was interested in forming a relationship with the band's parents, but it turned out that she was just interested in attempting to stop things with my outside partner. Just at this time, I am completely at a loss for what to do. Comments. Al Frosty. I have a sneaking suspicion that your wife has flipped. She has no intention of remaining with you for an extended period of time. Of course, it is just what I was thinking. Believe me when I say that I have no intention of causing her financial hardship. She is considering the possibility that she is so confident in us at this point that she is prepared to put an end to things. What about a year or 2 from now, when she makes the decision that she wants someone else and decides that she wants to open things up again? What about that? In the event that she wants it both ways, I will not allow myself to be blackmailed with the threat of divorce. I am John Miller. Already, your marriage has come to an end. All the best. OP, I am beginning to understand that completely. She is not the same person I married, and I despise the fact that she is. Lady Magpie, the fact that he is in an open marriage causes his wife to be oblivious of his infidelity. Therefore, he is simply cheating on her. OP, Yes, it seems like my wife had the impression that it was open. He informed her that it was actually the case, and that he was simply playing a game with his wife without her awareness. Regarding the question of whether or not his wife still desired to end the marriage and whether or not the divorce will still take place. My initial inquiry was whether or not she would be willing to consent to the fact that once it was closed, it would remain closed. In the event that we were to divorce, I then inquired as to whether or not she would be ready to forego spousal support. To be more explicit, I inquired as to whether or not she would be willing to waive it only in certain circumstances, such as when she cheated on me or when I refused to reconsider the marriage. She refused to engage in conversation about it. When I think about it, I don't want to be in a scenario where, 6 months from now, her outside partner wants to start over, or she sees someone else she's interested in and decides to threaten me with divorce once more if I don't open up the marriage again. There is no way that I intend to take advantage of her financially. When I asked her for a guarantee that she wouldn't ask me that question again, I was curious to see how she would respond to my request. The fact that she was not willing to put her money where her mouth was made very evident by her response. When it came to how he first met Amber, Amber was introduced to me by the band parents. Only in the band do our daughters share a close relationship with one another. It is not my wife's thing to be involved in a band, so she did not participate in any way. As she was looking for things to do while the quarantine was in effect, she came to the conclusion that she would want to assist with the concert. Should I have responded with, "No, you can't because my outside partner is a band mom and I don't want you involved in that circle"? If so, what would have been the appropriate response? She did not belong to my wife's group of friends. There was no involvement of my wife in the band until the month of May, which was a full year after I began seeing Amber. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that there was a very particular reason why my wife made the abrupt decision to become associated with the band. My relationship with Amber began in May of 2019, and she has been happily married to her boyfriend since December of 2018. Update 2. To briefly summarize, my wife expressed her desire to have an open marriage to me. While I did agree with her when she informed me that she was getting ready to file for divorce. While it took me a few months, she was able to find an outside partner in just 24 hours. The relationship between her and her partner ended. In an effort to coerce me into ending my relationship, she followed me around and introduced herself to my boyfriend. Following the failure of that strategy, she made the decision to seek that the marriage be terminated once more. The constraints that I imposed on it were ones that she was unwilling to accept. I am now moving on to the final month, which has been a really challenging month. After learning about the stalking, I confronted my wife. When I brought up her location history, she initially disputed it, but then I brought it up again. The attempt to deflect was made by her, and she claimed that I had invaded her private. Nevertheless, I did not accept the bait. At long last, she revealed that she did not enjoy the fact that I had someone on the side when she did not, and that a mother at the school made her feel as though she was too close to home. I made a deal with Amber that I would end our relationship if she committed to attending counseling, permanently ending the marriage, and beginning the process of looking for a job to assist with the costs of maintaining the household. It was her response that she is a mother who stays at home. I informed her that it was something that we may discuss again when the coronavirus has passed, but that if things return to normal, she will not be able to simply remain at home. We participated in a few sessions of therapy, and at first, everything went swimmingly. In addition to challenging her to explain why she had followed me, the therapist inquired as to the reason she believed it was necessary for her to leave the marriage, and she was required to address virtually everything that was going through my head. The situation then deteriorated. She stated that her outside partner was someone from her past, specifically a boyfriend from her high school years. Prior to anything happening, they had split up and then reconciled with one another. As a result of her sadness that she had not been able to accompany him throughout high school, she made the decision that she wanted to fulfill that goal. I was enraged by that. In the same way that my choice of a mother from school was too close to home, I warned her that her choice of a married ex-boyfriend was entirely contrary to the standards of appropriate behavior. My response to her was that I didn't even want to look at her. Because I didn't want my children to see me in such a state, I moved into a hotel room to get some much-needed rest. I was there for a few days with my family. Following that, I made the decision to return to my house and deal with the remnants of my marriage. I was surprised to see that my daughter, who is just 14 years old, was acting in a manner that was abnormally cold toward me when I arrived home. Quite dismissive was her demeanor. When I asked her what was going on, she proceeded to accuse me of having an affair with a band mom while she was with my mother. When I questioned her where she became aware of this information, she initially refused to tell me, claiming that it was irrelevant. However, she eventually acknowledged that her mother had informed her that I had been staying at the residence of my girlfriend after I had left. I informed her that it wasn't true, showed her the receipt for the hotel that was on my phone, and explained that her mother and I had a quarrel, so I decided to take some time away so that we could both calm down. I counted to 10 in my brain, and then I showed her the receipt. I made a vow to her that I loved her and that I would continue to love her even after she shed a lot of tears. Despite the fact that I was sweltering on the inside, I did my best to maintain my composure. Not even my wife was there to greet me. Instead, I went to Facebook and located the woman who was married to the guy. I wrote her a message in which I informed her that her husband had been having an affair with my wife for a year and a half, and that I would be pleased to send her any proof that she would like to verify this information. She expressed her gratitude and had a sneaking suspicion that something was wrong. A few hours later, my wife rushed to me in a fit of wrath, yelling that I had failed to maintain the confidentiality of our therapy session and that I had ruined the life of the individual. I inquired about her intentions about the disclosure of the fact that I was dating someone to our kid. In spite of her denials, she continues to refuse to acknowledge that she disclosed any information to her other than the fact that I was absent for a few days. On Thursday of last week, something occurred. Since then, we have not communicated with one another. Tomorrow is the day when we are scheduled to have another therapy session, but I am not sure if it is even worthwhile to have that session. Despite the fact that I continually catch her in falsehoods, I don't believe that I will ever be able to trust her again. When I think about it, I feel sick to my stomach, even though I am aware that filing for divorce is the prudent choice at this moment in time. The fact that I was unable to make my marriage work together makes me feel like a failure. In spite of the fact that I'm aware that this is the final destination, I can't help but feel like I'm going to puke up every time I attempt to phone an attorney. Comment, Acton of chatting. We are grateful for the update. I am sorry to read that therapy is only bringing more things to light, and it is evident that your faith in your wife has been utterly shattered as a result of her lying to you. I really hope that your wife wasn't the one to tell it to your daughter, but when people are sinking quickly, they will cling on to anything to keep them afloat, and turning the kids against you isn't exactly an innovative technique. I hope that your wife didn't tell that to your daughter. Despite the fact that the marriage has reached its conclusion, you are not a failure. It is highly recommended that you get in touch with the attorney at this time. No matter how challenging it may be, you should do it for yourself, for your children, and even for your wife, so that she can reach her lowest point on her own without wrecking your lives in the process. May you have success, sir. You are a resource. You should consult with a lawyer. Your wife started the relationship after she had already cheated on you or was about to cheat on you anyhow, if you're being completely honest with yourself. In the event that things did not go as planned, she did not want you to enjoy yourself while she was not. With no intention of doing so, she does not make any contributions to the household. Incessantly, she tells lies. What gives you the impression that anything would rectify this situation? It is important to believe someone when they reveal themselves to you. Either she gets her way or the highway. Therefore, as I mentioned before, you should consult with a lawyer, get your financial situation in order, and walk out of this terrible relationship. Oh my goodness, Lisa, you didn't fail, that's for sure. Your spouse had the intention of cheating, but she did not want to label it cheating. Never once did she want or anticipate that you would do the same. It is really manipulative of her to say that she would divorce you if you did not comply with her demands. The fact that she attempted to damage the relationship you have with your daughter is the conclusion that you have reached. The scenario is not one that I would consider to be fixable. Yet, you should never be too hard on yourself for any of this. It seems as though your wife is completely losing her mind, and although you have been trying to hold on for dear life, it may be time for you to let go. In addition, I would be completely honest with your daughter about the aforementioned circumstance. In light of the fact that everything will eventually be revealed, it is preferable to have the complete truth rather than rumors and lies. My parents canceled my 18th birthday to please my entitled sister, so I moved out with Grandpa, who then cut them off financially for good. Hello, I recently turned 18 a few days ago, but sadly my bratty elder sister insisted on my party being cancelled at the last minute, hence my parents cancelled it. I was very glad she wasn't even meant to be here for the celebration. But it's just my luck that strong Midwest storms caused all of the planes to be cancelled on the day she was scheduled to depart. 3 days before my birthday, she was meant to go to NYC with a group of pals, but for now they have had to postpone the trip. She has been rather offended over it, hence my parents have been walking on eggshells around her since they truly want to avoid aggravating her. She is the golden child of our family, hence they wouldn't dare, really. So much so, that she insisted my birthday be cancelled early on as, in her words, if she doesn't get to have fun, neither will I. Naturally, my parents sent the message to every single individual who had been invited without second thought. Much later in the evening, While I was eagerly waiting for all the visitors to arrive, but none were showing up, I discovered. When I asked my parents at last why none had shown up even by 7 p.m., they informed me they had called off the celebration without even asking me. They claimed my sister was somewhat disturbed and felt it would be inappropriate to throw a party while she was in this state. At that point, I lost all control and began yelling at my folks. It seemed simply to be unfair. My sister had always received different treatment from my parents, who expected me to sacrifice all my life and meet her every demand more than my own. And I always had as well. This was, however, going much too far. My sister was complaining about a trip that was cancelled for legitimate reasons outside of anyone's control, hence my parents had promised to plan my 18th birthday party, invited all of my friends and family so we could have a large birthday celebration, and now they had cancelled it without even notifying me. To exacerbate things, my parents had subtly informed every visitor that I had suddenly gotten ill, so I called off the party. Declaring I had a migraine and that using my phone was the last thing I needed, they asked that no one text me about it. Nobody texted me, hence I had no idea what was going on until the very last minute. I started fighting with my parents right away when they informed me what had transpired. Extremely offended as it wasn't my place to back down, I was yelling at them. Even then, their main worries were my being too noisy since they worried my sister would wake up from her nap. I kept yelling till my sister arrived downstairs, not giving a damn about that. Starting to defend our parents, she said they had done nothing illegal. She said that, as it would be cruel, she was the one who objected to everyone celebrating or partying while she was so distraught. She even said that I was the most entitled and spoiled person if I couldn't see that. Her utter arrogance following what she had done infuriated me to the point of me mindlessly starting to curse her. Things became physical as I grabbed her hair and tried to shake her. Our parents had to split us apart, and in the turmoil we missed the doorbell ringing. My parents opened the door to discover my grandfather waiting there after we at last stopped battling. Everyone in the family, including my parents, regards my paternal grandfather as a truly formidable force. Not great news for them was having him at the door. He began questioning why there was so much yelling and cursing as soon as he walked inside. Probably since I had been the loudest, he turned to me for responses. Usually, since it seemed petty, I wouldn't share with people the way my parents treated me, but I told my grandpa everything since this time I had nothing to lose. I told them I was unhappy with my parents and sister and that hiding the truth would not help them treat me any better, hence I saw no use in doing so anymore. It was time to stand up and I did. I also told him that I had dealt with my sister every day for the past 18 years, hence the bias toward her was not a one-time occurrence. But this episode was the last straw. I could not stand it anymore. My grandfather's expression was clearly shocked as soon as I spoke. He erupted at my father within seconds and started chastising him. It was then that I learned a lot of hitherto unknown facts. For the previous few years, my grandpa revealed he had been giving money to my parents every month since they had been trying to keep their business open and maintain the family. Basically, it was my grandfather who had been helping us all along, even covering the cost of the party my parents were ready to claim credit for. My grandfather chastised my parents for disappointing him with such treatment of me. From my conduct, he added, it was obvious that their devotion for my sister traumatized me. While my sister, being as stupid as ever, tried to argue with him, my parents silently let him talk. She said that her primary reason for requesting a cancellation of the party was her devastation at having her trip to New York, which she had been looking forward to for months, cancelled indefinitely. She said it was merciless of me to throw a celebration while she was in pain. But my grandfather did not have time for her lies. She was the perfect example of entitlement, he reminded her, canceling my 18th birthday celebration only to suit her emotions. He told her the world did not revolve around her, and I believe it must have news value for her. My sister's argument with my grandfather infuriated him even more, and finally he informed my parents he would no longer be helping them, they were on their own now. Then he advised me to get ready and accompany him should I wish to move away, as obviously my parents only gave my sister top priority. The only thing my parents were offended about, even when my grandfather said this, was losing his financial backing. I was about to accept his offer, but they didn't seem to care that he volunteered to let me live with him. This merely confirmed what my grandfather said, they gave no damn about me. I thus wasted not a moment. While my parents tried to haggle and fight with my grandpa to keep his support, I walked upstairs. I hurriedly packed my belongings, then headed downstairs with my grandfather, who barely turned around one final time. He apologized to me for everything I had gone through as we were driving to his house. He remarked he ought to have done this long ago. Though I'm not sure exactly what that implies, I'm just rather happy to be living with him right now. My parents are the only ones dissatisfied with this arrangement, clearly. They have been assiduously attempting to reach me. Although I have not blocked them yet, I have not been answering their calls or messages either. Still, I have been reading their books. My parents continue to text me, apologize, and claim they lacked thoughtfulness. Since my sister was more delicate, and her emotions were more fragile, they acknowledge they always put her first. They now regret it as they never understood they were ignoring me in doing this. They worked very hard to give the impression that they were ignoring me simply because they felt I was strong enough to manage it. To be honest though, my sister is practically 5 years older than I am. And if anything, she ought to have been the one capable of sharing with our parents. I bought no single word from what my parents said. I understood they were just acting this way since Grandpa wanted me to return and enable him to keep supporting them. From them, all I wanted was one sincere apologies, yet it never came. It really began to irritate me. So this morning I told my father to stop texting me. I replied I didn't need their false apologies. I knew they were merely doing this to maintain Grandpa's support. I had finished working with them. When they canceled my birthday celebration without even asking me, they had told me just where their priorities lay. That was the straw shattering the camel's back. Today I was never returning. My dad responded instead of apologizing, saying he and my mother had mistreated me, but he was ready to set things right and do anything necessary. I seized the chance to explain to them that I would only agree to come back and discuss helping them if, and only if, my sister would no longer be living with us when I returned. They made a mistake by stating they were willing to do anything. She is 23 and has been working for the past 2 years. By now she should have accumulated enough money to move out. I thus don't even consider myself to be being so unfair, but my parents see me to be callous and silly. Now AITA for informing my parents that should my sister move out I will only be back in with them. You know, that kind of thing. My parents had always given her first attention. These little items added up even if they were trivial. Sadly, I never considered it sufficient enough to discuss with my relatives. Even if I had, I doubt it would have been justification for anybody wishing to have me taken away or offered to move out from. I simply remained quiet about it since else it would have infuriated my parents even more. Regarding my grandfather, I mentioned he is a force to be reckoned with since practically every member of the family loves and respects him. He had won numerous challenging cases and was among the greatest attorneys back in his day. Not to mention quite rich, he leads a very disciplined life and is quite morally pure. Clearly then, everyone in the family looks up to him. I could have told him how my parents were treating me if I had wanted to, but up until last year he was rather busy seeing my grandmother, who was nearing death. He was busy, and I wanted not to disturb him with my little grievances while he was already handling so much. He was grieving when my grandma went away, so I didn't believe it was worth mentioning. I am quite appreciative now that he is willing to assist me. Our connection has always been good, hence it is not shocking that he has volunteered to let me live with him until I start college. He has even informed me he will cover all of my college costs until I'm working. First update. Hello, hence I have decided to keep to the condition I proposed for my parents. Obviously, even if they kick my sister out, I have no intention of returning to live with them. I merely want to find out whether they really do it. That will reveal whether they really want me back or whether they believe my sister is more valuable than the financial support of my grandfather. I haven't told him anything about this, but to be fair, I recently learned of other things he had been hiding from me. I therefore believe it to be fair enough. I'm talking about the fact that my grandpa knew my parents didn't truly want me all along, but he had never taken anything about it. Actually, even if my sister lacked any traits that would justify her partial behavior, I never even knew exactly why my parents favored her. My grandfather recently told me that originally, my parents had just intended for one child. 5 years following my sister's birth though, my mother became pregnant with me. Although they intended to end the pregnancy, my dad made a mistake by alerting the parents of my mother about it. My mother's grandparents insisted that it would be inappropriate to turn away that gift should my parents be blessed with another child. They thus persuaded my parents to maintain the pregnancy. Sadly, while my mother was 8 months pregnant, my maternal grandparents were in a horrible vehicle accident. Both died from their wounds following several weeks of struggling for their lives. My mom was clearly heartbroken. During her pregnancy, she experienced a rather mental break whereby she began accusing me of bringing ill luck into her life. She spent a few weeks institutionalized, and when she returned she was quite improved. Still, my parents secretly felt bad about letting the pregnancy get this far. After I was born, they had every intention of having me adopted, but this time my paternal grandparents intervened. They forbade my parents from putting me up for adoption and told them they were crazy. Though they were reluctant, my parents raised me. When I challenged my grandfather about the comment he made when he took me back home, he told me all of this. Now I see what he meant when he said he ought to have done this long ago. I agree, he ought absolutely to have. In any case, I know I will never go back to my parents since I now know the truth about the reason they treated me differently. My present treatment of them is absolutely justified. For years, they punished me for something not under my control. At least I'm better than them since I'm punishing them for truly their fault. Though I still find my grandpa frustrating for not being honest sooner, I know these things are difficult to discuss, especially to a young child. Right now, he is the only person I can rely on. Thus I try not to get too enraged with him. But I felt bad about it when I spotted my sister waiting outside today following school. I so requested one of my male buddies to accompany me home. Being a football player, he is rather on the larger side, and I knew that if my sister did anything, he would be there to assist. We have been friends for a really long time, and I totally trust him. He is know-all, even specifics about my family. He agreed to stroll me back home. It was really starting to creep me out as my sister trailed silently. Halfway home I turned around to challenge her on what she was trying to do. She said she wouldn't want to chat in front of a stranger, but I told her I hardly wanted to chat with her at all. She then began telling me that my behavior has been the reason our parents have been really anxious and unhappy. She said yesterday that unless she was forced out of the house, our parents had at last warned her that I wouldn't come back home or even speak to my grandfather about helping them again. She thought I was being somewhat unjust, thus she came here to challenge me about it. I told her, if I can't be happy, neither can you, thinking it ludicrous of her to believe I would dignify this with a conversation. She used exactly the same reasoning to have my party called off, thus I reasoned it should also apply to her. She started yelling at me, calling me a vile human being, when I turned around to head home. I merely kept walking with my friend and turned her off. I never bothered to reply or look around. I suppose turning her off was what truly infuriated her, as shortly afterward, she attacked me and I was on the ground. I could feel her weight on my back as well as my own from my rucksack. Fortunately, my friend physically had my back since I sensed her being hauled off me in seconds. My companion was supporting her with one arm, hardly breaking a sweat as I at last got back on my feet and dusted myself. Knowing my sister's aggressive nature, I suppose I was right to have him walk me home. Her even belief she could attack me and get away with it infuriated me. I thus approached her, gave her a strong slap, and warned her that I would call the cops should she attempt anything humorous once more. I knew our beloved parents would not value any more drama, with all the turmoil she had already caused. She still had the arrogance to try and fight with me, but following that slap my friend and I turned away and she stopped following me. I told Grandpa all about it when I returned home. He was about to contact the police, but I told him it was not worth it, she was just a loser, and I knew she had learned her lesson. Besides, she was definitely already in a dangerous posture with our parents. When I eventually told my grandpa about the state I had created for my parents, I expected he would be offended, but instead he laughed alongside me. He felt it was clever and believed my parents deserved to be let run wild. That was that then. Though I'm a little hurt from being thrown to the ground, I feel good knowing I finally gave my sister some sense. She really deserved it, and it was a long time coming. I now simply hope my sister and parents leave me alone after learning this. Update 3. Hey, I moved out practically a month ago. I will only be staying with my grandpa for a few more months as September marks my beginning of college. Officially, school has ended right now. I graduated from high school a few days ago. The football player friend I described in my last report was my prom date. Indeed, several of you folks called it, and I wanted to share this joyful little nugget before delving into what transpired with my sister and parents. 2 days following my confrontation with my sister, I got a note from my parents. They claimed to have figured out their desired line of action. As I had always been envious and spiteful, they chose to let my sister stay with them since, in their eyes, I was obviously not the kind of person they wanted around her. My mother's older brother had chosen to be a partner and investor in the company, hence they no longer needed financial support and no longer wanted me around. They acknowledged the only reason they wanted me back was because they needed money help from my grandfather. Although I had known their actual motivations from the start, this disclosure had little effect on me. I'm really sure they believed this would damage my emotions. I neglected even responding to the message. They wrote me another message a few hours later, stating they were going to block me immediately because I was a disgusting human being, just like my sister had claimed. I guess this reality got under their skin. They tagged me as violent and unappreciative in addition to calling me terrible and merciless. Obviously violent since I had smacked my sister the other day, and it was not surprising that they disregarded the truth that she had initially attacked and pushed me to the ground. Better still, my sister must not have told them, hence they most likely did not know. They also branded me unappreciative since, Despite all they had done for me, I still had the audacity to act as though they were negligent parents. They discussed how they had raised me, spent money on food, sent me to school, and clothed me. When parents bring up things like that while in a difficult situation, I truly find it perplexing. It doesn't make them unique. I consider it to be rather the minimum they could do for their children. But I suppose my parents believe the basic minimum is more than enough, hence I should treat them like my saviors for doing it. In any case, I wanted to reply but opted against it since it would waste time. I therefore blocked them first, and I was done before they could block me. My grandpa and I are living really nicely, and thus far most of the colleges I applied to have welcomed me. As promised, my grandpa will pay all of my costs. I am still waiting to hear from some of the better ones. We are still getting used to living together, and I do find myself feeling enraged at him sometimes for not removing me from my parents earlier. I am aware, though, that he had personal limitations and regrets not being able to support me when most needed. These days, we are working on it together. I never have to cope with my parents on my own evermore. Hopefully, they won't contact me either going forward. Update 4. Hi. I last updated 1 full year ago. I much appreciate the wonderful remarks and helpful DMs. Right now I am doing fantastic. My entire family, from what I know, has cut off my sister and dad. Although my mom's side of the family is still in contact with them, nobody from my dad's side speaks to them anymore because of my grandpa. Since I never discussed it, most people had no idea how I was being handled. However, as my grandfather began to tell others he was not in contact with my parents, they discovered the reason we experienced that fallout and my parents were ultimately shunned. It's karma, I suppose. I don't think anyone else could have caused this state of affairs except themselves. Although I don't know what my sister has been up to, I heard from a few people that she moved out and is now living alone last week. To be honest, that news motivated me to update all of you here. I am still going strong, as is my boyfriend. We get together on the weekends since I head home every weekend. My college is really near. I truly feel like a brand new person even though I have made many acquaintances here. Now closer than ever, my grandfather and I have also worked on our relationship. I doubt anything can ever change. He is my favorite person on earth. Though in the past he has made blunders, nevertheless, nobody else has. We have moved on from everything and I have forgiven him. Indeed, right now I am really content. I appreciate you folks. My stepmom tried to steal my college fund, accused me of awful things, and got me kicked out. Now the truth about her lies is finally unraveling. About my college fund, I, 18M, am in a tough position with my stepmom, Megan, 40F, and I am beginning to doubt everything. Bear with me since this is a long and complex matter. Some background. When I was 10, my parents split. It was an ugly split that left me feeling alone and confused for a long period. When I was 14, my dad, 45M, remarried Megan. She brought 2 children from her first marriage, Jack, 16M, and Emma, 13F, into our household. Though Megan's continuous attempts to push the one big happy family narrative, the change wasn't easy and we have never really felt like a unified family unit. Having kept a 3.8 GPA across high school, I have always been a good student. My ideal is to study engineering in a famous university. For the past 3 years, I have volunteered at the neighborhood animal shelter and competed in multiple robotics club contests. At least until lately, Dad has always been encouraging of my academic aspirations. Dad sat me down for a conversation a few months ago when I was beginning to apply to colleges. He mentioned a sizable education fund he had been building for me from birth. At most elite colleges, it's sufficient to pay living expenses and tuition. Thrilled, I felt as though my diligence was paying off and my aspirations were within reach. That evening, we spoke about several colleges, debated programs, and made plans for campus visits for hours. That was among the nicest talks I had with Dad in years. The trouble began when Megan learned of the college fund. It was first subdued. One morning, Dad had already departed for work when she cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice came out as laid back, but her remarks had a slant. She said, "You know, I worked my way through college. When I was your age. Applied for loans and worked part-time. It truly helped me to appreciate money." I tried to dismiss it, telling her I also intended to work a part-time job to help with extra costs. Megan countered, "But you really don't need to, do you? Not with all that money merely handed to you." Megan's criticisms become more regular and pointed from there. She began bringing up tales of self-made people at meals, always staring pointedly at me. She would discuss her cousin, who paid off her college loans in record speed and is now a successful entrepreneur, or her friend's son, who is working 3 jobs to pay for his engineering degree. Our dinner table started to regularly feature these tales, always followed by remarks about responsibility and the need of hard labor. Dad would nod along, apparently unconcerned about the insinuation that I was somehow less conscientious or diligent for taking his aid. The worst thing is Megan started controlling Dad. She mentioned to him how handing me the money would cause me to become dependent or hinder me from developing. She keeps urging me, like everyone else, to take out loans or work my way through college. I heard them in their bedroom one evening chatting. "I'm just worried about him, honey," Megan said. "Giving him all that money, do you not believe that could lead to laziness? Perhaps we could discuss paying for tuition simply or cutting the budget to cover living expenses." Dad mentioned something about how he had always intended to assist me with college, which terrified me, but he also said Megan might have a point about the need of working for things. Dad's began to wiggle since then. He is suggesting perhaps cutting the fund or paying just for tuition but not for living expenses. He seems to have forgotten all we have discussed about my future, all his pledges of support. I tried approaching Mom about this, but she and Dad hardly speak at all. She became irate when I told her over the phone about the circumstances and advised me to defend myself against that woman from pushing me about. Simple enough for her to say, she doesn't have to live with Megan. Though well-meaning, Mom's guidance doesn't truly assist me negotiate daily conflict at home. Things peaked last week when I heard Megan chatting to Jack in the kitchen. As I was walking to my room, Megan said, "Don't worry about college, honey. I'm trying to get some of your stepbrother's college funds sent toward your future. Given you and Emma won't, it is unfair that he receives such a big payout." What I was hearing defied belief. Megan not only sought to take away my education fund but also actively sought to donate it to her own children. The unfairness of it caused me to see crimson. I walked straight into the kitchen and approached her without thinking. Megan opened her eyes in astonishment. "Were you listening in?" she inquired. Too furious to give her any thought, I ignored her allegation. "You mean you're handling my college fund? Dad has been saving that money for me from my birth." Megan's face grew stiff. "I'm just making sure every child in this family receives fair treatment," she stated. "Jack and Emma won't have the same opportunity, thus it is not right for you to get such a huge amount." What I was hearing defied belief. "But it's not your money to distribute," I said. "Dad kept that for me long before you even started to show up." Furious, Megan responded. "Watch your tone, young guy. Right now you're quite selfish. Have you given your step-siblings' futures some thought?" I thought I was losing it. Egotistical? For wishing to pay for my school with the money my dad saved? How can that make me conceited? Megan opened her arms. A really conscientious adult would see the value of familial fairness. If money worries you, maybe you could look at community college. That would most definitely be a more humble, fitting decision. I froze. Her arrogance in suggesting made me furious. Jack only gazed at the floor, obviously uncomfortable, as I looked at him hoping for some support. "This is insane," I finally managed to reply. "I'm going to bring this up with Dad." Megan grinned and said, "Go ahead. But keep in mind, your father and I are partners. About what is best for this family, we decide jointly." I bolted from the cooking area. I had to explain what was occurring to Dad, but every time I tried to get him alone since then Megan has been there, hovering and guiding the conversation. The next several days were strained. Megan behaved as if nothing had happened, but her haughtiness set my wrath boiling. Always with a sharp glance in my direction, she would remark over dinner on the value of money, responsibility and not giving handouts. Dad looked completely blind to the currents of conflict. He would nod in time with Megan's remarks, sometimes adding his own story on the need of diligence. It seemed as though he had forgotten all our earlier talks on my future and all of his assurances of support. I got more and more alone. Clearly uncomfortable with the circumstances, Jack and Emma avoided me yet were reluctant to challenge their mother. Driven to maximize scholarship possibilities in case of need, I pushed myself into my college applications. One evening, I at last caught Dad alone in his study and said I wanted to chat to him about something. Dad turned from his computer, wrinkled brow. "What about, son?" I drew in a long breath. Megan has been voicing some opinions on the money distribution. Regarding myself, perhaps not utilizing it at all. We had a plan, I thought. Dad's look was difficult to decipher. He moaned. "Your stepmoms raised some reasonable comments on responsibility and the value of working for things," he stated gently. "Maybe we offered you the whole amount too quickly." I thought the floor was falling under me. "But as Dad promised," I said. "I've worked so hard, kept my grades, done everything you asked of me." Dad seemed tense. "I know, son, we're proud of you, but Megan thinks, since when Megan gets to decide my future?" I stopped, rage at last breaking through. She is not my mother though. She was not there during those years you were saving for my schooling. Dad's countenance grew stiff. Megan is my wife and a member of this family. She's right. More than your pledge to me? I questioned. The study door opened and Megan came in before Dad could respond. Is everything okay? She inquired. Everything's good, Dad remarked. Our conversation was only on college choices. Megan cracked a smile. Wonderful. I was considering us all sitting down this weekend to investigate some more reasonably priced colleges, maybe with decent work-study options. Dad only nodded as I quietly begged him to say anything, to defend me. I felt misled and demoralized leaving the study. Megan had clearly emerged victorious. My aspirations of enrolling in a prominent university were withering. Some additional points that I believe are relevant. 1. Megan has not worked outside the home since marrying my father. She always talks about the necessity of financial independence, but she is fully dependent on my father's income. When I brought this up once, she became really defensive, claiming that being a stay-at-home mom was the most important profession in the world. 2. When I brought up the unfairness of potentially transferring my education fund to Jack and Emma, Megan says it's about family equality, but she willfully ignores the fact that my father established this fund before she was born. She also ignores the idea that Jack and Emma's biological father is still in the picture and may contribute to their education money. 3. I tried to make a compromise by suggesting that I work part-time while in college to offset some expenditures, but Megan rejected this as not being responsible enough. She seemed to believe that until I am struggling and anxious about money, I am not learning the proper lessons. 4. Dad appears to avoid disagreement and frequently agrees with Megan to keep the peace. I'm concerned that he'll give in to her pressure over the college fund. He has always been this way, including when he was married to my mother. I believe this contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. 5. I've pondered contacting my grandparents, Dad's parents, about this, but I'm concerned that it may lead to further family strife. They've never been Megan's fans, and I'm afraid that if they get involved, it will just make the issue at home worse. 6. Megan is continually pushing the one big happy family narrative, yet her actions do not reflect her words. She treats Jack and Emma differently than she does me, and it's becoming increasingly clear. For example, she never questions their spending habits or lectured them on financial responsibility. 7. I'm beginning to wonder if Megan is so adamant about me utilizing the college fund because she wants to use it for something else, such as a large family vacation, home renovations, or paying for Jack and Emma's education. But I have no proof of this, only a suspicion. 8. Megan has started saying that I should be more appreciative for what she and my father have done for me. She talks about how much they've given to provide me a decent life, but in my opinion, it's my father who has made the sacrifices, not her. 9. I'm beginning to feel like I'm being gaslit. Megan will tell me one thing while we're alone, but then utterly deny it or twist her words when Dad is present. It is making me rethink my own memories. 10. I'm scared that if I push Megan too hard, she'll convince my father to kick me out. I'll be 18 shortly, and I know they won't be legally obligated to support me anymore. I feel as if I'm at a crossroads. If I stand up for myself and insist on using the college fund, I risk jeopardizing my connection with my father and making my home life miserable. If I give in to Megan's demands, I may be giving up on my aspirations and setting myself up for a future of financial difficulties. Am I an asshole for wanting to accept my father's college fund? Should I simply suck it up and figure out how to pay for college myself? I feel like I'm losing my mind here, and I could really benefit from some outside perspective. ETA, I felt I needed to clarify something regarding the college fund situation. When I mentioned the college fund that my father told me about a few months ago, it wasn't because I felt entitled. This fund surprised me, but it was consistent with my father's support of my academic endeavors throughout high school. Although I was unaware of the exact fund until lately, my father had always promised to sponsor my college tuition if I maintained decent grades. This pledge is why I worked so hard on my studies, maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I understand that I am not automatically entitled to this money, but I am really appreciative of the opportunity it symbolizes. If my father had informed me he couldn't afford to help with college, I would have understood and looked for other means to pay for it. My dissatisfaction stems not from a sense of entitlement, but from the abrupt change in plans following the fund's disclosure. Update 1. It has been nearly a month since my previous post, and I wish I had better news to report. Things have gotten worse, and I'm writing this from my friend Mike's guest room. I've been kicked out of my house, and my relationship with my father is in shambles. Here's what occurred. Following my last post, the difficulties in our residence worsened. Megan's comments concerning my college fund become increasingly regular and pointed. She'd bring it up whenever possible, usually with a sarcastic remark about how I needed to understand the importance of hard work and independence. Dad remained frustratingly passive, rarely intervening and frequently agreeing with Megan's statements. I tried to keep my head down and concentrate on my college application. I spent the majority of my time in my room, avoiding family meals and public settings as much as possible. But Megan seems to regard this as a personal issue. She began accusing me of being antisocial and ungrateful, stating that I was intentionally withdrawing myself from family activities. The breaking point occurred last weekend. I had finally received an acceptance letter from my dream school, a prestigious engineering program that I had been striving toward for years. In my excitement, I forgot about the ongoing issues and dashed downstairs to inform Dad. Megan was in the kitchen when I found him, but I was too excited to care. Dad's first emotion was one of gladness. For a moment, it felt like old times as he hugged me and began asking about the program. But Megan cleared her throat, and the atmosphere in the room altered suddenly. She began to complain about financial responsibility. I could not handle it anymore. All of the irritation and fury that had been building up over the previous months spilled out. I addressed Megan about her persistent intervention, attempts to redirect my education finance, and manipulation of my father. I told her she had no right to try to take what my father had been preserving for me since before she was even in the picture. The argument immediately escalated. Megan's face became red with rage as she began yelling about how ungrateful and selfish I was. She accused me of not accepting her as a member of the family and of constantly treating her and her children as outsiders. Dad tried to interfere, but neither of us were listening at the time. In the heat of the moment, I uttered things I regret. I referred to Megan as a gold digger who was just interested in my father's money. I accused her of attempting to take my college savings for her own children. I even mentioned that Mom hadn't worked a day since marrying my father, despite her incessant lecturing about financial independence. Megan's reaction was explosive. She turned to my father and informed him, through sobs, that she couldn't live like this anymore. She claimed she felt frightened in her own house and that I had been unpleasant and abusive against her for years. Then she dropped the bombshell that changed everything. Megan said that I had been making unwanted approaches towards her for several months. She said that when we were alone, I had cornered her, made sexual comments, and even attempted to touch her improperly. She pictured herself as a fearful victim who had been too afraid to speak out until now. I was struck into silence. The claim was so absurd and absolutely false that I couldn't even gather words to defend myself. I looked at my father, expecting him to see through the obvious lie, but the instant I saw his expression, I knew. He was looking at me with an expression of hatred and despair that I had never seen before. I tried to defend myself and explain that Megan was lying, but Dad would not listen. He appeared to have already made up his mind. In an angry voice, he told me to go to my room while he and Megan decided what to do. I spent the next 3 hours pacing around my room, alternating between anger and astonishment. I couldn't comprehend how my father could believe such a blatant falsehood. I tried to think of methods to defend my innocence, but it was my word versus Megan's, and it was obvious whose side my father had taken. Later that evening, Dad visited my room. His expression was grim, and he couldn't even look me in the eyes while speaking. He stated that he could not have someone who behaved so badly living under his roof. He told me I had till the end of the week to find another somewhere to live. I tried again to argue my point, to persuade him to see reason, but he refused to listen. He just kept saying that he was disappointed in me and that he never imagined I could do something like this. Before leaving, he handed me an envelope containing some money to assist me get started. I packed my possessions in a fog, unable to grasp what was going on. Jack and Emma avoided me totally, no doubt having heard some version of Megan's lies. I tried one final time to talk to Dad, to make him see the truth, but Megan was always there, playing the role of the devastated victim. I contacted my mother, explaining the circumstances through tears. She was outraged and wanted to confront Dad and Megan right once, but I begged her not to. I was scared it would simply make matters worse, and a part of me still hoped Dad would see sense on his own. Fortunately, my friend Mike came through for me big time. When I explained what had happened, he instantly offered his guest room. His parents are out of town for a few months on a work assignment, so I can stay here without bothering his family. Now I'm trying to adjust to living at Mike's place. He's been so supportive, but I can't stop feeling like a burden. I'm trying to help where I can, cooking meals, doing chores, but it's not the same as having my own space. I've been oscillating between anger and sorrow. How could my father believe such a terrible lie? How could he abandon our relationship, all those years of memories and trust, based solely on Megan's word? And how could Megan accomplish this? I knew she didn't like me, but accusing me of something so heinous, purposely destroying my connection with my father, is an act of cruelty I can't fathom. I considered visiting my grandparents, but I'm concerned about how they'll react to Megan's claims. What if they believe her too? I couldn't stand to see the same disdain and sadness on their faces. I've also contemplated going to the police to make a report about Megan's bogus claims, but I'm not sure how effective that would be. It's not like she's made these accusations in public or attempted to file charges, and I'm concerned that involving the authorities will further strengthen my father's trust in Megan's falsehoods. My mother offered to let me remain with her, but she lives in another state. Moving there would mean giving up on my dream school and the future I'd been striving toward for years. But I'm beginning to question if I have any other options. Megan's lies have damaged everything, and there appears to be nothing I can do about it. My father, the guy who was meant to know me better than anyone else and to have my back no matter what, has decided to think the worst about me without even giving me the opportunity to explain myself. I've been reviewing every conversation I've had with Megan, trying to figure out where this lie came from. Was it merely an opportunistic move when she saw how angry I was during our dispute, or had she been preparing for this for a long, waiting for the ideal time to get rid of me forever? Regardless, the level of calculation and brutality involved sickens me. I don't know what will happen to my college fund now. Will Megan offer everything to Jack and Emma? Will my father use it to pay for my dream school, despite the fact that he believes I'm a predator? I've been attempting to figure out my future moves. Mike assisted me in finding a part-time job at a nearby grocery store. It isn't much, but it will let me contribute to household expenditures and save some money for the future. Every time I try to think logically about my predicament, I am overcome by a flood of rage and hurt. I've pondered contacting Megan's ex-husband Jack, and Emma's father. Perhaps he has some insight into her conduct, or has dealt with her lies. But I'm frightened of opening the can of worms. The truth of my situation is beginning to sink in. With little cash and no permanent place to reside, I rely on a friend's generosity. The unfairness of it all is almost unbearable. I did everything correctly. I studied diligently, remained out of trouble, and worked hard to achieve my goals, but all of that has been taken away from me in the course of a single weekend because of one person's falsehoods. I'm trying to stay strong and not let this break me. I keep telling myself that the truth will come out someday, that my father will understand what Megan has done and come to me to apologize. But with each passing day, that dream seems more and more like a juvenile fantasy. I am not sure what my next update will include. For the time being, I'd like to thank everyone who read my original message and responded with advice. I'm sorry I couldn't take action on most of it before everything broke apart. If anyone has been in a similar scenario or has any ideas on how to proceed from here, I would be really grateful. I feel lost and alone, and any advice would be appreciated. I'll try to post another update as I have more information. Until then, wish me luck. I have a hunch I will need it. Update 2. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous update, and a lot has happened. I'm still residing at Mike's apartment, but there was an unforeseen development that I needed to inform you of. I was at work, refilling grocery store shelves, when I received a call from my grandparents. I nearly didn't answer. I'd been avoiding calls from unfamiliar numbers, scared it was Dad or Megan calling, but something urged me to pick up, and I'm glad I did. When I heard my grandmother's voice, I knew something was wrong. She seemed frightened and bewildered, asking if I was all well and secure. I had no idea what was going on until she indicated that Dad had called and told them some troubling news about why I had left home. I became quite concerned that Megan's falsehoods had expanded beyond simply Dad. I asked my grandma what Dad had told them, and her answer confirmed my darkest suspicions. Dad had told them about Megan's phony claims, presenting me as a predator who was making unwanted advances on my stepmother. I felt terrible. It was bad enough that Dad believed these lies, but now my grandparents do too. I couldn't bear the notion of them gazing at me with hatred and despair, like Dad did last night at home. But as my grandmother continued speaking, I recognized something. My grandparents were doubtful of Megan's charges, unlike Dad, who believed them right away. They knew me and had seen me grow up, and something about this scenario didn't sit well with them. That's why they called, not to condemn me, but to hear my side of the tale. For a while, I considered brushing it off, telling them it was all a mistake and changing the subject. I was so exhausted defending myself against these nasty lies. But then I realized that this could be my only chance to tell the truth and have someone in my family trust me. So I took a deep breath and told them everything. I started from the beginning, outlining the college fund and Megan's growing attempts to intervene. I told them about the arguments and Megan's plans to redirect the money to Jack and Emma. I explained the last argument and how Megan made up these horrible charges as she felt she was losing control of the situation. As I spoke, I could hear my grandparents' reaction shift, from astonishment to shock to fury. They offered questions to clarify ideas, but they largely just listened. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then my grandfather spoke, his voice harsh with controlled rage. He stated they believed me and knew I would never do the things Megan accused me of. He questioned why I hadn't come to them sooner, and I said that I was worried they wouldn't believe me, that they'd side with Dad like he had with Megan. My grandma told me that they would always be at my side, and that they were sorry I had been going through everything alone. Then she said something that made me freeze. They were going to talk to Dad. I panicked a little, afraid that confronting Dad would just make matters worse, but my grandparents insisted. They stated that they could not stand by and let their son ruin his relationship with his child over a falsehood. They promised to call me back once they'd spoken with him. The following few hours were terrible. I couldn't concentrate on work. What if Dad doesn't listen to them? What if this only made him angry, reinforcing his belief in Megan's lies? Or worse, what if my grandparents changed their views after speaking with him, believing Megan was telling the truth after all? My phone finally rang again, and I answered it. My grandfather's voice was solemn as he described what had occurred. They contacted Dad and confronted him with what I had told them. Dad tried to defend Megan at first, but they wouldn't allow him to get away with it. They demanded to know how he could believe such dreadful things about his own son, and how he could toss me away without even attempting to investigate. Apparently, the conversation became heated. My grandfather stated that for the first time in years, he had raised his voice at his son. He warned Dad that he was making a terrible mistake, that Megan was manipulating him, and that he risked losing his relationship with me forever. Then my grandfather dropped a bombshell. He informed Dad that if he didn't fix the situation, if he didn't at least try to listen to me and find out the truth, they would change their mind. All of their assets, including the inheritance Dad had always imagined would be his one day, would be transferred to me instead. I was stunned. I'd never considered my grandparents' inheritance, let alone how it may affect my future. To learn that they were willing to use it as leverage to persuade Dad to see reason was staggering. My grandmother then picked up the phone. She told me that they were completely behind me and would do anything to help me get through this. They offered to let me stay with them and help me figure out my college situation. They even promised to pay a lawyer if necessary to protect me from Megan's additional bogus charges. I was beyond grateful, but yet afraid. This seemed to be getting out of control, becoming more than just a family fight. I asked them how Dad had reacted to their ultimatum. My grandfather stated that Dad was frightened into silence at first, then became angry. He accused them of taking sides without understanding the whole facts and of attempting to blackmail him. Dad ended the call by hanging up on them. We're currently in a waiting game. My grandparents have given Dad a week to contact me and attempt to hear my side of the story. If he doesn't, they say they'll carry out their threat about the inheritance. Part of me hopes that this will be the wake-up call Dad needs, prompting him to examine Megan's story and recall who I truly am. But another part of me is scared that this would only exacerbate our differences, that Dad will interpret this as me turning his folks against him. My living situation with Mike is still fine, but I know I won't be able to stay here forever. His parents will return in a few weeks, and while they may understand the situation, I cannot impose it on them. My grandparents' offer to let me remain with them is intriguing, but they live in a different state. I'm still working at the grocery store to earn money for college, but it's little compared to what I'll need. I've looked at scholarships and loans, but without access to my college fund, the numbers simply don't line up. The idea of giving up on my preferred school, settling for a cheaper option, or deferring college entirely is upsetting. I've also been dealing with the emotional consequences of all this. Some days, I can barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the injustice of it all. Other days, I'm enraged, ready to confront Dad and Megan and push them to accept the truth. Mike's been fantastic, listening when I need to scream and giving me space when I need to be alone, but I know this scenario is also worrying him out. My mother has been phoning on a daily basis, offering to let me come and stay with her. I appreciate her support, but I can't leave. Furthermore, a small petty part of me does not want to give Dad and Megan the joy of driving me away totally. So now I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see if Dad will reach out and be willing to hear the truth. I'll try to post another update as I have more information. Until then, wish me luck. I have a feeling I will need it. Update 3. It has been 3 months since my last update, and the issue has drastically escalated. I'm still absorbing everything that has happened, but I'll attempt to explain it as simply as possible. Brace yourselves, for this will be a lengthy one. I received a call from my father about a month after my grandparents issued an ultimatum to him. His voice trembled, and he sounded like he had been crying. He asked if we could meet in person because he wanted to tell me something important. I was nervous, but I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When I saw him, I hardly recognized him. He appeared to have aged years in just a few months, with dark circles beneath his eyes and a disappointed stoop in his shoulders. As soon as we sat down, he burst into tears and begged for my forgiveness. He said that he had found the truth behind Megan's falsehoods. Apparently, she had been cheating on him with her ex-husband, Jack, and Emma's father for several months. Not only that, but she was pregnant, and the timing indicated that the baby couldn't be my father's. Dad overheard Megan on the phone with her ex, discussing their future plans. He didn't get the complete picture from that single talk, but it was enough to raise his suspicions. He began paying more attention, seeing contradictions in Megan's stories and actions. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Dad arrived home early one day and discovered Megan and her ex in a compromising position. When challenged, Megan did not instantly reveal everything. Instead, she attempted to deceive Dad, claiming that he was hallucinating and that her ex was only there to talk about something concerning the children. But Dad wasn't buying it anymore. He wanted the truth, and what he discovered was far worse than he had anticipated. Megan and her ex had reconciled a few months earlier, allegedly over difficulties with Jack and Emma. One thing led to another, and they began an affair. However, as the truth developed, it became evident that Megan's dishonesty extended beyond the affair. She stated that she had been dissatisfied in the marriage for some time, feeling as if she had rushed into it without properly moving on from her previous relationship. Instead of dealing with these concerns honestly, she tried to exploit the situation to her benefit. Megan admitted that she viewed Dad's college fund for me as a danger to her financial stability. She didn't have direct access to it, but she had been gently encouraging Dad to consider utilizing the money for other things, such as home renovations or family holidays. Her strategy was to progressively drain the fund while protecting her own financial position. The bogus accusations against me were part of the plan. Megan attempted to downplay her role in it, claiming that she had felt uncomfortable around me at times, but admitting to exaggerating and distorting incidents to cast me in a negative light. Her purpose was to create space between Dad and me so that I wouldn't interfere with her plans. When Dad confronted Megan with all of this, she did not even have the decency to seem embarrassed. Instead, she tried to create a fresh falsehood, alleging that her ex had misled her and that she was also a victim. She cried and claimed she had made a mistake, but she still loved Dad. But the play broke apart when her ex, enraged at being thrown under the bus, revealed Dad text messages and emails confirming Megan's willing participation in the affair and manipulation. Some of the conversations contained details about their future intentions, such as how they would manage the divorce and share assets. The cruelty of it all was overwhelming. Megan had not only abused Dad's confidence through the affair, but she had also deliberately worked to destroy his relationship with me and ensure her own financial future at our expense. She'd exploited Dad's fears and desire to make his new marriage succeed, all while planning her exit strategy. Dad was a disaster as he told me everything. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness but hoped that one day I would be able to trust him again. He informed me that he was filing for divorce immediately and would do all in his ability to make things right. The divorce process has been a nightmare. Megan, recognizing her scheme had failed, is now attempting to collect as much as she can before the divorce is official. She claims she is entitled to half of everything, including the house and her father's retirement money. Dad filed for divorce as soon as he learned about Megan's infidelity, but the legal process takes time. We've gone through numerous preliminary hearings and failed mediation attempts. Our lawyer estimates that it will be another 6 months to a year before everything is finished. Fortunately, the evidence of her infidelity and deceptive behavior is working in Dad's favor. In our state, while infidelity does not immediately prevent a spouse from getting alimony, it is considered when spousal support is determined. The judge has been unimpressed by Megan's assertions, especially considering the existence of those damaging text messages and emails. Megan's pregnancy has complicated things. She's attempting to use it as leverage, implying that the baby could be Dad's after all, and that he should not abandon his child. However, considering the timing of her affair and Dad's proof, it's extremely unlikely that the baby is his. Dad's lawyer has urged him to obtain a paternity test once the baby is delivered, but Megan can't use the pregnancy to her advantage right now. Megan could not directly access my college fund, but she had been asking Dad to take money for other family expenses. Dad, eager to keep the peace and believing Megan's falsehoods about me not worthy of the money, had agreed several times before. He pledged to replace every dime, even if it meant working 2 jobs. The most annoying element is Megan's continued attempt to manipulate everyone around her. She informs Jack and Emma that Dad is attempting to steal her baby, that he is abusive and that they must testify against him in the divorce process. She's contacted family members, telling them about how she was misunderstood as a wife who made a mistake but deserves another opportunity. She even had the guts to contact me and cry, claiming that she never intended for things to escalate and that she was simply terrified and bewildered. She tried to persuade me that if I told Dad I forgave her, maybe we could all be a family again. The manipulation was so clear that it was almost funny, but it still left me sick to my stomach. Jack and Emma are stuck in the middle of a nightmare. They'd been spending more time with their dad recently, unaware that their parents were rekindling their love behind my father's back. When everything was revealed, they were devastated. They've contacted me and Dad, apologizing for not standing up for me and saying that Megan had also supplied them false information about me. Megan had informed them that I was jealous of them and attempting to undermine their relationship with Dad. She had convinced them that I was unstable and potentially aggressive, which is why they avoided me in the last 3 weeks before I went. Learning the truth has been devastating for them, and they are still trying to accept who their mother truly is. Dad has attempted to make apologies in every way he can think of. He has contacted my grandparents, thanking them for their support and apologizing for not listening sooner. He has volunteered to pay for therapy for me, understanding the emotional stress produced by this entire situation. He's even trying to make amends with my mother, admitting that his terrible decisions have placed an unfair burden on her. I'm still trying to digest everything. Part of me is relieved that the truth is out, that I've been vindicated, and that my father now believes me. But another part of me feels angry, mad that it took this level of betrayal for him to realize the truth, angry that I had to go through months of suffering and uncertainty because he couldn't trust his own kid over a lady he'd only known for a few years. For the time being, I've returned home and settled back into my old room. It is weird to come back here, knowing everything that has transpired. Dad and I are walking on eggshells around each other, unsure how to repair our connection. We're going to begin family therapy shortly, hoping to work through some of the hurt and mistrust that is built up. My college plans are back on track. Dad has pledged to do whatever it takes to get me into my ideal school, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. My grandparents have been extremely supportive, offering both emotional and financial assistance whenever needed. The legal battles are not done. Megan is battling tooth and claw for every dime she can obtain, prolonging the divorce procedures with unrelenting demands and allegations. Her counsel has attempted to portray her as a caring wife and stepmother who made a single mistake, but proof of her deceptive behavior is jeopardizing her case. Dad's lawyer has been advocating for a fair yet strong settlement. Megan's infidelity and intentional deception make it unlikely that she would receive the wealth she was hoping for. The judge seemed ready to award her merely the bare minimum necessary by law, which is a minor triumph in this disaster. There's also the issue of possible criminal charges. Megan's activities, according to the lawyer, may be considered fraud due to the extent of financial manipulation. It's a complicated legal matter, and Dad is still debating whether he wants to pursue it or just finish the divorce and go on with our lives. Megan's ex isn't getting off easily either. His involvement in the affair and subsequent manipulation has been revealed, and he is now facing legal consequences. His present wife, yes, he was married the entire time, has filed for divorce, and his firm is considering dismissing him as a result of the incident. It's a minor consolation, but it feels like some kind of justice. As I sit here writing this update, I am struck by how swiftly and completely one person's falsehoods can devastate numerous lives. Megan walked away from the disaster she caused without looking back, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. It will be a long road to recovery for all of us. I have no idea what the future holds, but for the first time in months I feel like I can breathe again. The truth is out, my name has been cleared and I have my father back. Even though our relationship is tenuous right now, it is more than I could have hoped for during those dark days when I felt I had lost everything. Thank you to everyone who has followed my tale and offered their support. Your warm thoughts and wisdom have been a lifeline through this ordeal. I'll publish another update if something big happens, but for now, I'm concentrating on recovering and moving forward. Wish us luck. After everything that's transpired, I believe we'll need it. Brother's mysterious ICU battle. From locked-in syndrome to a miraculous recovery, our long journey of hope. A week ago my brother was in his 30s and healthy. Today he's in the ICU with locked-in syndrome. December 15, 2023. The stroke doctor is concerned it may be locked-in syndrome, anyway. The original neurologist and attending physician basically made us believe there was no hope he was in there at all anymore. Yesterday the stroke team came in and assessed him, and that's where the new diagnosis, theory, came from. I don't know if I believe it or not. Is it good if he's still in there? Or is it cruel to even want that? We don't know if he'll ever get better. Very few people recover from LAS. He has an ongoing infection and inflammation in the brainstem. We don't want him to live in storage in a care home for 30 years, vented, unable to move or communicate, just existing instead of living. But how do you pull life support from someone who may be conscious, and can you even do so, legally? Or he may get a blood clot from being bedbound, or pneumonia, or the COVID the family just tested positive for. He had no health problems at all a week ago. The last few years have been the happiest of his life, it just doesn't feel real. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Hey OP. I have worked with many locked-in patients. It's a fate I would never wish on anyone. Diagnosis is hard because it's effectively a diagnosis of exclusion. If it's true, textbook locked in, the clearest supporting presentation is if the patient can constantly move their eyes up and down, not side to side, to command. The difficulty lies in that real people aren't textbooks. Plus, there are so many confounding factors that it can make it hard to say with certainty if a patient is truly locked in. All that being said, I've had multiple locked-in patients recover to near normal levels of function. I was shocked because previously locked in was a death sentence. Assuming he is young and healthy and his stroke is highly localized to the area that results in locked in, he may actually make some meaningful recovery with intensive therapy from locked-in accredited facilities. There are a few highly regarded facilities in the US. It is a long and arduous process, I'm talking a year minimum, but recovery is possible under the right circumstances. Edit. Also, ongoing infection is going to make it really difficult to determine exactly what's going on. You really need to be able to normalize everything else before you can say with certainty if someone is locked in. Comment 2. My aunt got pneumonia like 10 years ago and ended up in a coma. It was so severe. My mom went to the hospital and would just sit and talk to her, read her favorite books, put on her favorite shows, etc. Even though the doctors said she wouldn't be able to recognize anything. She later woke up and told my mom that she heard everything my mom did and what my mom did gave her hope to keep going. So have hope OP, there's always hope. OP, thank you. I asked his friends if he'd been intending to read any books and ran out to pick one up yesterday so I could read it out loud to him. Unfortunately it's the Andromeda strain and I didn't realize the subject matter until buying it. Comment 3. You should read it and once it gets to the climax just stop. Then be like, hey motherfucker, you can finish this once you're out of the coma, I'm leaving it right here for you. And put it by his bed. But I also have a sick sense of humor sometimes, lol. But seriously, don't give up hope in him. Hope can do crazy things and people have gone through crazy ordeals only relying on hope. Be his hope if he needs it. What should I get for my brother's ICU nurses who are working over Christmas? December 24, 2023 title. My brother has been in the ICU for a few weeks. I appreciate all of the nurses so much, but wanted to get at least a little something for the nurses who are missing out on time with their families to care for mine. Me and the immediate family have COVID and aren't even able to go in person. Food delivery, sweets, chocolates, gift cards, Amazon, Starbucks? I want it to be something actually desirable, useful. Thank you. Relevant comments. Comment 1. My favorite gift as a nurse that a family brought in was a ton of practical stuff from Costco, with enough to go around. Think, lip balm, gum packs, protein bars, Fairlife protein drinks, then maybe a few goodies like chocolate or candy. I'm sorry your brother is in ICU, hope he makes a good recovery. Glad it's been a good experience with the staff. Comment 2, just speaking from a personal perspective but a sincere thank you card is awesome. We post ones we get in our break room and so when we go to eat a quick snack it's like a nice little words of affirmation boost reading them. Comment 3, if food, be sure to schedule 2 separate deliveries, one for day shift, typically 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and one for night shift, typically 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. If you just deliver it once during the day, it will be gone or cold for the night shift. Update. A week ago my brother was in his 30s and healthy. Today he's in the ICU with locked-in syndrome. January 4, 2024. Thank you everyone for your kind words on my last post. This has been harder than there is language to explain, so I won't try. We have a tentative diagnosis for the cause of the encephalitis now, after getting a test back from Mayo Clinic. Disseminated histoplasmosis with CNS involvement, a brain fungal infection, basically. Extremely rare for someone immunocompetent, very difficult to diagnose, and often misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed. Viral meningitis is the usual misdiagnosis, which is exactly what they'd been assuming. His presentation matches it perfectly, including the upper respiratory thing he was dealing with for weeks prior. He was started on IV antifungals the very day they got the test back. In the past few weeks we've lost the suspicion that he was locked in. He was in a full coma until 2 days ago, when he spontaneously opened his eyes. One neurologist, stroke specialist, said this was an encouraging sign. The general neurologist said it was nothing. So as usual, we have no idea what's going on, what to expect, or what to hope for. Perhaps being foolishly hopeful, it does seem meaningful that there was never any improvement until a few days into the antifungal course. He's been treated for everything, and I mean everything else. I didn't know so many antibiotics even existed. He's going to be transferred to a major research hospital in Manhattan as soon as an ICU bed becomes available. We're just waiting for the call, and when it comes they'll stuff him in the helicopter, day or night. Because he's had strokes, it's possible that nothing can ever be done and there will be no improvement from here, but I'll wait for the big brains in NYC to tell us that. Also, he was Joel from The Last of Us for Halloween. Method acting asshole. I have the watch he made for it, and if he ever recovers enough for me to do so, I'm gonna throw it at his head. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I had disseminated histoplasmosis, which took 5 months and multiple hospitalizations until my organ began failing. I transferred to another hospital's ICU, and was intubated for 10 days till they found what seemed to be yeast in my system, which indicated something fungal related. They hit me with anamorphic B and my fever came down, and ultimately they pulled me out of the ventilator. I don't know if there's much I can say to comfort you, but I know there's zero community here of those who have faced disseminated histoplasmosis. So if you have any questions, thoughts, etc., DM me, I am here for you. Comment 2. As a sibling who watched my sister battle an ultra rare. No chance this could be it, blood disease from an ICU bed, I'm holding y'all in my heart. Thank you for taking the time to update a bunch of strangers on the internet. Question from a family member: what can we do to make your lives easier, and what do you wish families wouldn't do? February 8, 2024. I saw a discussion here recently about how going to the nurse's station is frustrating and needy. I had no idea this was the case and had considered it less obnoxious than hitting the call button. Using a button or bell to summon someone always gives me the ick and felt inappropriate for non-emergencies. So in a vein similar to that, what should we the family do to make your life easier? What do you wish more families would do? And similar to the above, what do you wish families would stop doing? Relevant comments. Comment 1. Don't ask for stuff for yourselves. I'm here to help your family member, not get you a blanket, coffee, water, a new pillow, a different chair, etc. Also feel free to help your family member adjust their blanket, change the channel, adjust the heat AC, charge their phone, etc. You don't have to call me for that. Comment 2. Clustering care is super helpful. Hitting the call light is great, and when you do, it's nice to think of other things you might need. For example, hey, I think my dad needs help to use the bathroom. Also, since it's 11, could we order lunch and change his sheets while he's up? And while you're in here, could you tell us when his next pain meds are due? It's not always going to be possible. Humans are not robots. People can be frequently incontinent, need pain meds, etc. But it's so nice to be able to knock out several tasks at once instead of coming in and out multiple times in an hour. To be clear, please use your call light when you need it. Don't wait if your loved one is sitting in a mess or wailing in pain just because you don't want to inconvenience us. Comment 3. Try to appoint one person to get updates from the doctors and nurses that can update the rest of your family. When grandma has 5 daughters visiting and calling for updates, it can be overwhelming. Don't come up to the nurse's station instead of using the call light, then stand there and wait. Don't order DoorDash and expect staff to run around looking for it or bring it to the room right when it arrives. Update. I wanted to give an update to my 2 posts from earlier this year. I know a few folks reached out to me. I'm sorry for not responding, as I wasn't in a place at that time to really do so. But your kindness, and the fact that total strangers on the internet genuinely cared, was a balm for me when I really needed it. The final diagnosis is an extremely rare autoimmune disorder called acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. The trigger isn't clear, but it can really be caused by almost anything. He had an upper respiratory infection prior to all this, which is a common trigger. He slowly emerged from his coma over the course of a month or 2, passing through different levels of consciousness and awareness, slowly, and was in fact locked in the early stages. He could only move his eyes to communicate. He received plasmapheresis treatments and started regaining mobility after that. It started with slightly moving his head side to side, slightly moving his lips, slightly twitching his fingers. Soon he was mouthing words and curling his toes. Adam apparently has a good prognosis for recovery, and the larger hospital we transferred to told us that there are no strokes in the brain, despite the initial hospital's assessment. The larger hospital has significantly more advanced MRI machines, which meant they could capture pictures the small regional hospital could not. This is something I wanted to bring up because I want to emphasize the importance of seeking that second opinion. Had we not transferred to the larger hospital, got the plasma treatment, got the new MRIs, we may very well have made different decisions regarding life support. I have no doubt other families in our position through the years have been forced to do just that. Do not give up until you have a diagnosis. As for how things are going now, he's been slowly regaining his mobility, and the neurologist told us we have no reason to believe he won't walk again. Cognitively, he is 100%. He doesn't remember the first 6 weeks or so after waking up from the coma, but does remember everything before getting sick perfectly. He weaned off the ventilator in March. He transferred to an inpatient rehab facility and was there for several more months. He's now home and doing outpatient rehabilitation. He can move every body part, though he has muscle wasting and will need to continue intense physical therapy to get out of the wheelchair. Being in hospitals for nearly a year is not without its own complications: sepsis at least once, pneumonia multiple times, so much MRSA and IV antibiotics, and a stage IV bedsore. But, considering where this started, it still feels like a miracle. 5 hospitals, 8 months. Please hold your family members close, and don't take for granted the amazing things your body does every day. It can all go haywire overnight. And to anyone who read these posts and cared for some strangers on the internet, thank you.